Qin, Han, and Three Kingdoms keywords of the novel. Han K without pop-ups. Download the complete collection of Han K TXT, and read the latest chapters of Han Quebec Chapter 1. Suspension Spring Placement. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1 Suspension Spring Placement. On a day in the autumn 7th month of the 3rd year of Yuan Feng, 78 BC, Flea Food had just passed. The dawn in the northwest is dry and cold, and the outline of the Qilian Mountains is clear. The Silk Road leading to the western regions is faintly visible, and the distant garrison troops can hear waves of dog barking. This is the morning when the spring is suspended. Xianquanji was a post station on the border of the Han Empire, located in Xiaogu County, Dunhuang County. It was surrounded by desert wasteland with few people, and within a radius of dozens of miles, it was a unique place to rest. Whether it's the Hu merchants heading east or the Han envoys heading west, they all have to rest here, let their horses drink enough fresh water, and make their own food to satisfy their hunger. If they can sleep comfortably on the bed in the ancestral home, it's even better than living immortals. It's just that the officials and apprentices who have suffered in the hanging spring must stay up all night and be careful when serving. Early in the morning, Ren Hong was awakened and came out to entertain guests. As a suspended spring assistant and a petty official fighting for food, my salary is not high, but I have to manage everything. Ren Hong suppressed his desire to yawn, knelt behind the desk, spread out his pen and ink, squinted his eyes, and observed the two talismans presented in front of him. The introduction letter and pass from the Han dynasty. According to the laws and regulations of the Han dynasty, for every establishment, the identity, number of people, and accommodation expenses of all personnel must be recorded, which has remained unchanged for 20 years since the construction of the Xianquan establishment. Ren Hong murmured silently in his heart, that's why 2,000 years later, so many Han slips, totaling over 10,000, were discovered at the Hanging Spring site. Before inexplicably arriving in this world, he had driven to the Gobi Desert to search for the Hanging Spring site, but he never dreamed that his fate would be closely linked to this post station 2,000 years ago. It's all because of that strange sandstorm, which turned a promising 21st century history student into a Han dynasty youth named Ren Hong. As soon as he opened and closed his eyes after confirming that it was not a prank or variety show, he could only start his Han dynasty life as Ren Hong. Half a year has passed, and Ren Hong has adapted well. From an inexperienced person to a suspended spring assistant, he received a salary, had no worries about food and clothing, and began to think about his future prospects. How to legally leave this remote small post and head towards a broader world. It's true that I didn't dress well and ended up in the unpopular Zhaoxian Zhongqing. Emperor Wu of Han has been dead for a long time, and the traveler Wang Mang should not have been born yet. This year marks the 9th year of the reign of Emperor Zhao of Han, Lu Fuling, in the 3rd year of the Yuan Feng reign. Of course, this emperor, who was younger than Ren Hong, is still alive and has no posthumous title, and no one dares to call him by his name. Whenever it is mentioned, one should bow to the east and call it Jinsheng. Or, according to the unwritten rules of the Han people, it can be referred to as county officials. Ren Hong's understanding of this obscure era is only superficial, and he can only desperately grasp every piece of information in his memory. The names that twinkle in the annals of history, such as Hu Guang, Su Wu, and Lu Bingji, cannot be counted on for the time being. Those heroes who promoted the great power of the Han dynasty in the western regions, such as Fu Jiezi, Chang Hui, and Princess Jiao, should have all passed by the Hanging Spring, but what was the specific time? So whenever a traveler passes by, Ren Hong often takes advantage of his position to inquire about intelligence and gather useful information. And the two talismans in front of him caught Ren Hong's attention. Dunhuang Central Captain Bu Guang Ho Guan Tun Chang Su Yanian. Dunhuang Central Captain Shi Chen Pengzu. I have never heard of anyone like Ren Hong, who is an unknown figure in history. Ren Hong glanced ahead and saw the owner of the talisman sitting in the transmission room, drinking the refreshing rice wine that had just been served. Su Yanian was the military official sitting on the left side, dressed in armor and with thick beards. He had a rough voice and spoke loudly, with every word clearly transmitted to Ren Hong's ear. As for Chen Pengzu, he was the scholar opposite him, wearing an official robe and an ugly appearance. He had a three-pointed beard and always liked to shake his head, as if he didn't take every word seriously. What caught Ren Hong's attention was the name that appeared multiple times in this civil and military conversation. Fu Jiezi. Ren Hong was a bit excited, but he still lowered his head and pretended to register seriously, but his ears stood up, carefully listening to every word the traveler said. He could see that he was wearing a yellowed linen jacket with a little ink stains on the cuffs, his wrists turned white, and his palms had no calluses, which meant he was not involved in childbirth. With the flick of the rabbit hair brush, on the pale yellow Populus Euphratica wooden slips, ancient Han script is taking shape one by one. After only a moment, the situation was basically understood. Su and Chen were ordered by the central commander of Dunhuang to go to Yumen Pass in the west to handle business trips and welcome the return of the imperial envoy Fu Jiezi. The rooster crowed and they traveled for several hours. They are currently debating whether to take a sip of alcohol and leave, or to leave after dinner. Hard work pays off for those who have a heart. Finally, here we are. Ren Hong's hand paused, pinching the pen and lifting it in the air for a while, finally taking a deep breath. Ban Chao, I'm sorry. So, when the two started talking about Fu Jiezi's heroic deeds in Kucha, Ren Hong suddenly raised his hand and slammed his brush heavily on the table. Pop it. Like a thunderbolt. Su and Chen looked back in shock and saw a young official standing up, throwing his pen and shouting angrily. A great man with no other ambition or strategy should still emulate Zhang Qian and Fu Jiezi for meritorious deeds in a foreign land. How could he continue to work in the pen and inkstone for a long time? Just now, I heard the two of you mention that Fu Jiezi's killing of the Xiongnu envoy in Kucha temporarily boosted his courage, so he made this statement to disturb the officials. Ren Hong falsely stood up and apologized to the two of them by bowing his hand. He had just snatched the famous quote from Ban Chao, 100 years later. The military official Su Yanian, whose liquor was covered in thick beards, had a straightforward temperament and didn't think it was rude. He even clapped his hands and laughed heartily, saying, it's okay, young student. You just had a conversation, and you also have the ambition to be a hero. When it comes to the surface, it's better to come and drink together. Chen Pengzu looked at Ren Hong with a slanted gaze, but saw that he was 18 or 19 years old, 8 feet tall, wearing a soap-colored cap on his head, without any need, and his face was not black. So young, he spoke wildly, and coupled with Chen Pengzu being also a civil servant in the field of writing and inkstone, the boss suddenly became unhappy and ridiculed Ren Hongdao. Meritorious deeds in a foreign land. Little child, with no hair on his mouth, yet shameless in his words. Do you know the dangers of the western regions? Just say west of Yumen, there is a white dragon pile, 3 ridges of sand, and 1,000 miles of quicksand, extremely dangerous. Only 12 people who enter can walk out alive. Have you ever been there? No. Ren Hong thought to himself, of course I have. There is also Yaden Devil's City over there, with a ticket of 80 yuan per person. Once upon a time, either as a student, following a mentor for research, or traveling on his own, he almost traveled to various famous scenic spots and rivers in the western regions. Of course, this cannot be said. Ren Hong could only respond, however, there are also Dunhuang in the Gobi Desert, but it's not that big. I grew up here and have become accustomed to this climate. I can even ride a 2-0 camel and know how to find water sources and avoid sandstorms. Moreover, I have heard that Marquis Baoang Zhang Qian was from Hanzhong County, and Fu Jiezi was from Beidi County. The climate is completely different from that of the western regions. They can all go to the desert of quicksand. As a frontier soldier, if it were really my turn to be the pioneer of the country, how would Ren Hong dare to lag behind others? Chen Pengzu frowned and said, even if we cross the White Dragon Pile and the 36 kingdoms of the western regions, their respective languages are different from those of the Central Plains. Most people who go there are stuttering and unable to even eat a meal. What will you do? Ren Hong smiled and said, actually, I can speak a little Western Hu language. Now it was Chen Pengzu's turn to be surprised. So awkward Hu language, it must be a translator from a canonical country, how could you also know it? Ren Hong explained, in the summer, there was a Hu merchant from the western regions who was stranded in Xianquan for 2 months due to various reasons. I asked him to teach me the Lulan dialect. Although he was not very proficient, his daily interactions with him were sufficient. He hasn't wasted the past 6 months. Chen Pengzu actually only spoke through hearsay in the western regions. Seeing that he couldn't defeat Ren Hong, he felt a bit embarrassed and had to seek help from Su Yannian. Brother Su, you went to Luntai garrison back then. Come and talk about it. Let me say. Su Yannian took a sip of wine and added, actually, the most troublesome thing in the western regions right now is not the sandstorms, nor the 36 kingdoms. He placed the wine cup heavily and gritted his teeth, saying. But the Xiongnu. 11 years have passed since Emperor Xiaowu dismissed Luntai from farming. During the reign of Emperor Wu of Han, the Han army often engaged in military activities in the western regions, from Dunhuang to Lopner, and often raised pavilions, while there were hundreds of soldiers in the fields of Luntai and Suli. Su Yannian is an old soldier who once stationed fields in Luntai. Speaking of this past, he has a lot of emotions. Ren Hong knew that in the later years of Emperor Wu of Han, the people in the Kanto region were filled with resentment, but the old emperor was just going his own way, with the sole intention of annihilating the Xiongnu in his lifetime. As a great barbarian country, the Xiongnu could travel thousands of miles from east to west and could not be eliminated in just 1 or 2 wars. Moreover, Emperor Wu of Han used the wrong general and suffered repeated defeats in the war against the Xiongnu, losing tens of thousands of troops and almost losing all the victories of Wei and Hua in their early years. The war was not smooth, and Emperor Wu of Han's temperament became increasingly violent. He always suspected that someone would curse him and kill 3 prime ministers in a row, and his 2 daughters were also imprisoned and executed. Everyone in the world was in danger. It was not until the disaster of witchcraft broke out that the Emperor of Han Wu finally regained his consciousness. In his later years, he issued the Luntai Edict to rest with the people and suspend expansion outside the territory. The big cauldron, which was supposed to boil, finally cooled down a bit. But the Han dynasty went from being militaristic to another extreme, and all its stationed troops in the western regions, Tianzhu, withdrew and gave up managing the western regions, giving the Xiongnu the opportunity to return there. In the past 11 years, Han soldiers have never left Yumen to the west again. As a soldier, Su Yannian was indignant about this. On the contrary, it was the Xiongnu people who galloped in the western regions. We often went to Yumen Pass, and heard the officials there say that from Lulan to Dawan, the envoy alone had an unparalleled power. In every country, the city-state kings were all subservient, and they even instructed other countries to rob and kill the Han envoy, making the great Han ashamed. As far as I know, there will be 3 incidents within 3 years. Chen Pengzu took the conversation and described the frequent interception and killing of Han envoys by western region city-states. If it weren't for this, Duke Fu would not have been so angry when he angrily rebuked his king in Lulan and killed the Xiongnu envoy in Kucha. Now, from Yumen to Dunhuang, everyone is praising Duke Fu's actions. The envoy holding the oath is still so difficult, let alone ordinary pedestrians and merchants. It's even less safe. After speaking, Chen Pengzu glared at Ren Hongdao and said, "Young child, do you dare to say anything about going to a foreign land to achieve fame and fortune?" Ren Hong did not refute this time. He stood up silently and handed the 2 talismans to Su and Chen. The transmission symbols of the 2 senior officials have been registered. Oh, didn't you just keep chatting with us? You haven't finished your work yet. Chen Pengzu walked a few steps to the table and saw that the bamboo slips cut from Populus Euphratica had indeed been transcribed with their talismans, and the calligraphy in the official script was beautiful. This dual-purpose effort was rare. Ren Hongdao said, "Although I enjoy talking to merchants and travelers from the past, I won't delay anything important." He no longer cared about Chen Pengzu's sarcastic remarks, got up to tidy up his pens and inkstones, but heard Su Yannian strike the table with his fist and said with hatred, "Alas, if the Marquis of Chongping and the Marquis of Champion were still here, how could they call Hulu crazy?" The Marquis of Chongping was Wei Qin, while the Champion Marquis was Hu Tsubing. The famous generals during the reign of Emperor Wu of Han have all passed away for many years. Ren Hong had already arrived at the door, and upon hearing this, he turned back and said, "I secretly thought that although Wei and Hua did not exist, the Han family's sons' pioneering efforts would never stop here. Every generation will have new Wei, Hua, and Zhang Qian appearing. Two gentlemen, let's wait. I dare to speak recklessly. The day when the Han army returns to the western regions and expels the Xiongnu is not far away." Su and Chen were somewhat surprised, but before they could savor these two sentences, Ren Hong said, "By the way, the food served by the hanging spring is the best among the 9 houses in Dunhuang. Su and Zhang might as well eat it before leaving." After saying goodbye, he left. Chen Pengzu realized that he still didn't scare Ren Hong, so he chased after the door and shouted, "The Han army will soon return to the western regions. If it's really as you said, I'll give you a good horse for free." But Ren Hong did not come back. As for Su Yannian, he still sat in front of the table, repeating Ren Hong's words repeatedly. He had already remembered this little official from the hanging spring, his bold words, as well as the prophecy that the great Han will soon return to the western regions. Su Yannian secretly said, "When I arrive at Yumen Pass and see Fu Gong again, I must tell him what happened today." What the two of them didn't know was that when Ren Hongkai walked out of the transmission room, he showed a clever smile. It's better to say some things in person. But there are some things that can be better conveyed through others' mouths. P.S. New book opening, seeking collection, seeking recommended tickets. For the layout pictures of the hanging spring, please refer to the Starting Point app and the high-quality area of the book circle. We will upload some from time to time in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Silk Road. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Silk Road. I only hope that Su Yannian and Chen Pengzu can help pass on today's words to Fu Jiezi's ear, otherwise we will have to wait for Fu Jiezi to come to Xianquan and deliberately ask the stingy man or Xia Wengdi to speak. Ren Hong had such a calculation in his heart that it was only when he heard that Su and Chen were going to Yumen Pass to welcome Fu Jiezi that he deliberately threw his pen and made a statement. However, although Chen Pengzu intended to intimidate, his words were not false. The western regions were indeed a dangerous place for people in the Central Plains to turn pale. The greater the risk, the greater the opportunity. No, for someone like him, if he wants to rise to the top, this is simply the only opportunity. It is necessary to talk about the background of Ren Hong. The ancestors of the Ren family were also wealthy. During the reign of Emperor Wu of Han, Ren Hong's grandfather was a high-ranking official in the court, having achieved a rank of over 2,000 stones. Unfortunately, Ren was implicated in the famous movement, the Sorrow of Witches, and Ren Hong's grandfather was executed. Fortunately, the 3 ethnic groups were not executed, and the Ren family was relocated to Dunhuang to build the border of the motherland. At that time, Ren Hong was only 3 or 4 years old and was led by his parents on a journey to the northwest in the cold winter months. He encountered a major disaster and all the clan's servants were scattered, except for a cook named Xia Dingmao, who did not leave. He took care of his distressed owner in front of the carriage and behind the horse. When the people of the Central Plains first arrived in Heshi, they were not satisfied with the water and soil. Ren Hong's parents only passed away halfway, and only Xia Dingmao was loyal to his duties and brought Ren Hong to Dunhuang, where the master and servants relied on each other for their livelihoods. More than a decade has passed, and immigrants continue to arrive. The court set up Xiaogu County by the Shul River, and Xia Dingmao was recruited to work in the kitchen of the hanging spring. And Ren Hong also grew up, and Xia Dingmao poured out all his wealth and resources to allow him to go to the county to worship Confucian scholars as his teacher. However, in my memory, Mr. Zheng from Xiaogu County didn't have much ink in his stomach, and he didn't know poetry or spring and autumn. After studying for 2 years, Ren Hong learned the literacy textbook Fan Jiang Pian written by Sima Xiangru. He shook his head and memorized the words, by Lian by Ji Chang Pu, Mang Xiao Guan Jiao Zhu Yu, and could only recognize them completely. Fortunately, Ren Hong was physically strong and had some skills in fighting and wielding swords. Even in an era of widespread illiteracy, he could boast that he was capable of both literature and martial arts. But misfortune never comes alone. In the spring of the 3rd year of the Yuanfeng reign, Ren Hong returned home from the county town and encountered a rare sandstorm. He fainted in the sandstorm and was rescued by someone for a long time. He sought medical treatment and witchcraft, and finally woke up. But when Ren Hong woke up, he was completely new. Ren Hong was naturally unwilling to spend his entire life in a suspended spring and had also attempted to show some performance. Last month, when the Western Postal Governor of Dunhuang passed by Xianquanji, he admired Ren Hong's speech and felt a sense of promotion. But there is no further discussion on this matter. It is likely that the postal inspector returned to the county to investigate Ren Hong's background, criminal's children, imprisoned 3 generations. Reciting the curse, Ren Hong walked out of the ancestral home and arrived at the courtyard of the hanging spring. The hanging spring is a standard square dock courtyard, measuring 50 meters by 50 meters, with a wall height of 2 zhang. It is built with rammed yellow soil mixed with jiji grass, making the sky above appear blue. As an official post station, although the hanging spring sparrow is small, it has all 5 internal organs, integrating a post, postal post, transmission house, and kitchen service, providing all food, accommodation, and transportation services for past business officials and envoys. Ren Hong saw the servant spreading out some smelly bedding, beating the dust and allowing the sun to shine on the dock wall. As for the opposite side of the transmission house, there is a kitchen filled with smoke. The kitchens of the Han dynasty, whether private or public, were generally set up in the east, so there is a song that goes. Eastern kitchen utensils and dishes, vertebral cattle cooked with pigs and sheep. Hanging springs are no exception. The kitchen is adjacent to the east wall of the dockyard, with a small courtyard surrounded by a 1-foot low wall. Inside, there are areas such as granaries, stoves, and firewood houses. Women began to wash rice and cook, and the kitchen was already sharpening its knives, faintly smelling the fragrance of meat wafting from the pottery tripod. As for the official in charge of the East Kitchen, Xia Dingmao, an old servant of the Ren family who raised Ren Hong, is now standing at the entrance of the East Kitchen, reprimanding a soldier. How many times have you said it? Keep an eye on Dongchu's fire pit and never extinguish it. Why did you just squat there and fall asleep? It's also difficult to make a mistake for that, because Xia Dingmao's accent is an authentic dialect of Shu County. He speaks so fast that he can't understand a single word. Xia Dingmao has white hair and white silk wrapped around his head. Head, the sun and rain have darkened the skin, wearing only a short shirt and strong arms. This outfit looks like an old farmer from northern Shaanxi in later generations. Xia Wang. Ren Hong only let out a shout, and Xia Wang immediately went from scolding his subordinates with fierce and evil spirits to showing kindness and kindness. As he walked over a few steps, he was about to bow to Ren Hong, completely forgetting that he was a better than 100 stones chef, and when it comes to rank and salary, he was even higher than Ren Hong. Is the gentleman hungry? The Eastern Kitchen has a hot and good soup. For many years, although times have changed, Xia Dingmao has always remembered that Ren Shi was kind to him and treated Ren Hong like a young master. Ren Hong did not allow him to bow, and the two were named master and servant. However, for Ren Hong, Xiaowang was like his own uncle. Xiaowang, it's good news. Ren Hong whispered to him. The person I was waiting for, Fu Jiezi, is finally coming. In a moment, an old and a young person walked towards the gate of the hanging spring. Ren Hong was in front of him, carrying a red willow basket on his back. He turned to look at Xia Mao and said. It's almost time to eat now. Xia Wang left the kitchen. Is it really okay? During the Han Dynasty, common people only had 2 meals a day, and breakfast time was the time for meals, which was around 9.00.10.30 in later generations. As usual, at this time, Xia Mao had to cook in the kitchen. Just when it was almost time to eat, there wasn't enough scallions in the eastern kitchen, and those disciples couldn't rely on them, so I personally came out to search for them. As Xia Mao spoke, he wiped the sweat from his head and said, "It's been so hot this morning, it's going to be tough today." Ren Hong knew the reason why Xia Mao insisted on going out. The hanging spring was located in such a small place, but there were 37 officials, soldiers, apprentices, and officials living there. Coupled with officials and pedestrians, it was so dense that it was not suitable to whisper. After leaving the hanging spring, the world suddenly becomes clear. When there is no sand and dust, one can clearly see the surrounding scenery, which is completely different from the central plains. The sky is a stunning deep blue, without any clouds, contrasting with the earthy yellow earth. To the north of the hanging spring is a desert, with occasional poplar forests and strange willows growing, mostly black pebbles and scattered small grass piles. That is Shishawa and Salt Alkali Beach, separated by them, faintly visible beacon towers 30 miles north, one after another, like resolute sentries, standing motionless, stretching hundreds of miles from east to west, forming the Great Wall defense line in the northern part of Dunhuang. With these beacon lights guarding Dunhuang, the Xiongnu dared not come over to graze horses and plunder. To the south of the hanging spring is 3 lines from far to near, from high to low. The farthest white line is the Snow Mountain, or more than 100 miles away, which is the Qilian Snow Mountain spanning the entire Heshi corridor. The middle one is the Black Line, which is the 3 dangerous mountains. It is said that in ancient times, Emperor Shun exiled the rebellious 3 Miao to this place. The latest one is the Red Line, a branch of the 3 Threats Flame Mountain. There is no grass growing on the mountain, presenting an eerie brownish-red color, like a raging fire, hence its name. At the foot of Flame Mountain, there is a green oasis nourished by a small stream called Hanging Spring, like a piece of jade in the Gobi. Even if the sandstorm is big, it cannot be covered up. Flowing along the spring water, the oasis permeates and continues to the main road connecting the Central Plains and the western regions. Ren Hong has given this road a good name. The Silk Road. Walking on the road with no one around, Xia Dingmao finally expressed his doubts. The old servant is dull and still doesn't quite understand why the gentleman is so devoted to Fu Jiezi. Ren Hong, however, betrayed Guanzi and said, "How much does Xia Wang know about Fu Jiezi?" Xia Dingmao chuckled and said, "The old servant is just a cook, and his understanding of this person naturally comes from his food." A year ago, Fu Jiezi was on his way to the western regions and passed by Xianquanji. At that time, the old servant was a kitchen assistant. I only remember that this person had a large appetite and especially loved to eat chicken. Fu Jiezi alone ate 2 of them. Although chickens are relatively thin these days, one person who kills 2 is also the king of big stomachs. Ren Hongren Jun couldn't help but say, "I know all of this, it's all recorded in the volume of Jun Ma Jian Gua Xian Quan Ji Fei Shu." Unfortunately, I came to Xianquanji late and didn't see this scene with my own eyes. So Ren Hong's only understanding of Fu Jiezi was to inquire with the officials and merchants who came and went. Fortunately, there is not much entertainment at night these days, and the hanging spring does not provide special services, so chatting has become the only way for travelers to pass the time in the long night. Everyone lay on the bed of the ancestral home, chatting about the scenery of their respective hometowns and news about the western regions and Chang'an. The accents of different prefectures and states intersected here. Although most of them were useless nonsense, over time, Ren Hong also collected a lot of information. Ren Hong said, "I have heard from previous officials that Fu Jiezi was a good son of a northern family. During the reign of Emperor Xiaowu, he served in the army and accompanied General Li Guangli of the 2nd Division on the expedition to Dayuan. However, his achievements were not significant. Now, 20 years have passed and he is only a 600-stone steed supervisor." The Juanma Jian was subordinate to one of the 9 ministers, the Grand Tutor, and had the same rank as the county magistrate. Although his rank and salary were not high, Fu Jiezi was in charge of the emperor's horseback riding and often walked in palaces and gardens, which was highly appreciated by General Huguang. This time on his mission to the western regions, he passed through Lulan and Gizi, and he did a lot of things. When he left, he angrily rebuked King Lulan. When he returned, he killed the Xiongnu envoy in Kucha, but none of them were the main focus. His main purpose was to go to the kingdom of Dawan. Dawan is already located west of Tsongling, in the later regions of Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. Speaking of this, Ren Hong asked Xia Dingmao, "Xia Wang knows what is most famous in the kingdom of Dawan." Xia Dingmao is quite clear. "Of course, it's a sweaty horse." Ren Hong clapped his hands and said, "That's right, it's the heavenly horse." At this point, they had already circled to the southwest of the hanging spring. Sitting in a suspended spring stable with 15 carriages and over 40 cattle and horses, a large amount of livestock manure is produced every day, which has a touching smell and is not suitable for diplomatic officials. So the stable is located outside the south wall of the yard, one is close to the grazing oasis, and the other is to let the howling wind take away some of the scent. At this moment, a dusty post guard had just arrived at the Hengquan station from the west. The stableman welcomed him into the station, while others were responsible for feeding the horses water and beans. If the post guard was in a hurry, they would have to replace him with a new horse. Ren Hong stood on tiptoe and could see that the horses in the stable, with a shoulder height of usually 7 feet, were already outstanding, pushy horses, placed in the central plains. But the height of the Dawan heavenly horse can be over 8 feet. In the Xianma Jing, it is said that a horse is above 6 feet, a horse is above 7 feet, and a horse is above 8 feet. For the dragon. Half a century ago, for this rare horse breed in the Central Plains, the Han dynasty even launched 2 expeditions against Dawan. Despite the people across the country tightening their belts, they were exhausted from this expedition. Although the Han dynasty only achieved a disastrous victory in the end, only 20.3 people survived and returned to Dunhuang. But this war not only gained thousands of Dawan horses, but also allowed the entire western regions to witness the power of the Han dynasty, and the oasis city-states were invincible. Emperor Wu of Han was also very happy. When Tianma entered the court, he personally wrote a song called Shiji Tianma Song. In order to achieve this great auspiciousness, he specially changed the name to Tianhan. So Tianma had special political significance for the Han dynasty. These past events were witnessed by Xia Dingmao with his own eyes while serving as a servant of the Ren family in Chang'an, but the following events require keen insight. Ren Hongdao said, according to the alliance under the city back then, Dawan would transport 2 sweaty BMW as tribute every year. But this tribute relationship has been interrupted for a long time. This is what Su Yannian and Chen Pengzu had previously told Ren Hong, that the Han army had not traveled westward to Yumen for more than 10 years, causing some neglect of the Han dynasty by the western regions. With the instigation of the Xiongnu, for 3 consecutive years, Han envoys were intercepted every year, and the influence of the Han dynasty in the western regions seemed to have retreated back to before the Battle of Dawan. After 11 years of rest, the Han Empire, which had regained its national strength, would not tolerate this situation for too long. 2 years ago, General Hua Guangcai defeated political enemies such as Sang Hongyang, Shangguan Jia, Princess Chang'avai, Prince Yan, and others. After reading it, Ren Hong was surprised to see how long the list was, and he even felt that Hu Guang was really scary. Last year, Fu Jiezi was immediately sent to Dewan to restore the heavenly horse tribute during the reign of Emperor Wu. What does this mean? Xia Dingmao still didn't quite understand and guessed recklessly, is it the general, or does your majesty want to ride the heavenly horse? Ren Hong couldn't help but laugh and cry. Riding a ghost, not to mention the ferocity of the sweaty horse, the little emperor couldn't climb up without anyone's help. Hu Guang, a creature that lives entirely for politics, must have a clear political purpose in making decisions and doing things. He pointed to the west, the Silk Road stretching thousands of miles westward under the scorching sun, and expressed his speculation. No, this means that the court intends to reopen the western regions. P.S. Thank you for your reward, recommendation ticket, investment, collection, and roast. Please continue to work hard. As a newcomer in October, I need your help. And yesterday's 2 alliance leaders, who were under Wudong, and a certain Mr. Dan who did not want to be named, thank you very much. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Ren Shaoqing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Ren Shaoqing. Ren Hong knew that in the later years of Emperor Wu of Han's reign, after several expeditions to the north of the desert that could not be reconciled, the confrontation between the Han and Xiong empires had shifted from direct confrontation to competition for the western regions. The Han dynasty is bound to implement the strategy of cutting off the right arm of the Xiongnu to the end. The arm of Heshi will continue to extend westward, firmly holding the western regions in its palm and seizing the Xiongnu's mansion. And Fu Jiezi's mission also confirmed his speculation. Fu Jiezi's envoy was just the beginning. In the next 10 years, the Han dynasty and the Xiongnu will inevitably have a split in the western regions. For the children of border counties, the good time to make contributions to foreign lands has come again. The wind is already blowing, but with Ren Hong's current humble identity, he can't make it through at all. He still needs a little help. Ren Hong said to Xia Dingmao, in the past, Zhang Qian hollowed out the western regions and became the Marquis of Baoang. Xia Wang, I believe that this Fu Jiezi is today's Baoang. I hope to take this opportunity to gain the appreciation of Fu Jiezi and then go on missions to various countries in the city walls, in order to achieve great success and fame. The reason why Ren Hong was so confident was because he knew that Fu Jiezi would soon make remarkable achievements in the western regions, and his reputation would be recorded in history. He would be compared to Zhang Qian by later generations and was a model of foreign feudal lords. This is the most vivid and pressing memory point of Ren Hong for this era. This credit is not worth it. It's too risky. This was Xia Dingmao's first reaction after listening to Ren Hong's plan. After being silent for a while, his grey head shook into a tambourine. The western regions are far and wide, with 10 people going, often less than 5 returning. The gentleman is the last blood and blood of the Ren family. Last time he encountered a sandstorm, he almost lost his life. The western regions are even more dangerous than Dunhuang, in case. That was really an accident, and Ren Hong felt a bit helpless. At this moment, they had already walked into the populous Euphratica forest to the south of the Hanging Spring. This was the most common tree in the Dunhuang area, which was called Hutong in the Han dynasty. Only such strong tree species can thrive in harsh environments. Just like the immigrants exiled to Dunhuang, they are not good men and women, filial sons and virtuous grandchildren. Ren Hong thought about how to persuade Xia Dingmao. After all, he needed his assistance, so he patted the hard as stone poplar tree and said, I am the grandson of a criminal official. According to the law, I should be imprisoned for 3 generations. You can only serve as a junior official, not as a senior official. You must not hold a position of filial piety and integrity. Hanging in the spring, a miser is appointed, with a rank of 100 stones and a rank of 100 stones or less, all of whom are junior officials. Although Ren Hong loves hanging springs and has made it his home after half a year, the life of being able to see his head for the rest of his life is very scary. Xia Dingmao didn't think so. The weather was too hot, so he sat on the trunk of a withered Populus euphratica tree, took off his white headdress to wipe his sweat, revealing the deep wrinkles on his forehead. He murmured. "There's nothing wrong with the young official. In the past 6 months, the gentleman has purchased new cooking utensils for the Eastern kitchen and taught the old servant many innovative ways to eat. If the old servant were to say that the 2,000 stones in Chang'an may not have the same variety of food as us, it would be better to be carefree on the edge than to go back and engage in intrigue and fear. I don't want to stand out for the enjoyment of high office and high salary." Ren Hong bowed heavily to him and said, "If I were only a minor official in this life, how should I serve my grandfather, the Ren family, and avenge my wrongdoing?" Xia Dingmao was taken aback for a moment, and immediately became somewhat moved. So the gentleman has always remembered this. The enmity of the 9 generations, the great spring and autumn, my great father died unjustly, just over 10 years ago. How dare you forget it, young man? Looking at some phantom figures hanging in a spring under the heat wave in the distance, Ren Hongdao. Xia Wang, tell me again about my eldest father, Ren Shaoqing. The head of the family's hometown is Xinjiang County, Hunan County. At the age of 15, he worked as a servant and drove to Guangzhou. He felt that that was the place where a heroic husband should stay, so he stayed in Yufufeng. Speaking of the past, Xia Dingmao rarely smiled. But the head of the family has just arrived and has no official connections, so he can only serve as a substitute in Wugong County. Every adult man in the Han dynasty had the obligation to serve, but he could also hire someone to replace him, and even this gave rise to an industry. The head of the household started by begging for thieves, and the father of the pavilion solved several cases, and became the pavilion chief, who was the most humble official. Ren Hong nodded, but secretly muttered to himself. The pavilion is not small. Although the pavilions of the Qin and Han dynasties were only local grassroots units, equivalent to township police officers, they were able to master military equipment and make friends with heroes. In the chaotic era of the late Qin dynasty, many people started their careers from this. For example, that black-hearted ancestor Liu Bang. That Ren Shaoqing couldn't compare to Emperor Gao, but in a peaceful environment, his experience was also very inspiring. According to Xia Dingmao, Ren Shaoqing was quick-witted and treated the evil youths in the pavilion obediently. He arranged hunting locations for the villagers and distributed deer, chickens, and rabbits fairly, earning praise. This work lasted for 10 years, and he was promoted to the position of 3 elders in the county. 10 years later, he was promoted to the position of 300 stone martial arts county magistrate by being close to the people. However, later on, Emperor Wu of Han traveled to Wugong and Ren Shaoqing was dismissed due to poverty in Wugong County, which made him unable to hold the people accountable and did not prepare enough curtains. This is really a sudden disaster. Emperor Wu of Han, like Emperor Qin Shi Huang, likes to run around the world too many times, which really makes officials and people restless. Ren Hong once heard several drunken soldiers from Hedong who were heading to Dunhuang to govern the canal. He mentioned that there was a prefect of Hedong who, in despair, hanged himself because Emperor Wu of Han did not prepare the necessary preparations during his hunting tour. Ren Shaoqing just lost his official position, so he's lucky. Xia Dingmao continued, after the head of the household was dismissed, he became a sacrificial servant of General Wei. General Wei, it was Wei Qing, who served as a sacrificial servant for him and Hua Tsubing. This was probably the fastest way to advance at that time. Unlike Li Guang, who was unlucky and pitiful, working under these 2 subordinates alone can earn him a lot of military achievements. But the problem is, entering the door of the Wei family is like painting a layer of paint, which cannot be wiped off in this lifetime. This is probably the beginning of Ren Shaoqing's tragedy. Later on, Ren Shaoqing really gained the favor of the emperor and his official fortune prospered. He served as the governor of Izhou and punished many powerful and evil officials. In a case in Shu County, he also saved the Xia Dingmao family who had become mining slaves. From then on, Xia Dingmao followed Ren Shaoqing and became his private servant. A few more years later, Ren Shaoqing was appointed as the commander of the Northern Army, with a rank of 2,000 stones. Then, it was the disaster of witchcraft that caused the heads of people in Chang'an to roll. As a first-hand witness, Xia Dingmao still had some palpitations when recalling the situation at that time. At that time, Prince Wei had already killed Jiang Chong and sent troops to cause chaos, while left Prime Minister Lu Qiuqian was ordered by Emperor Xiaowu to besiege with official troops. The two sides fought in the streets and alleys, and there was a great chaos in Chang'an, with tens of thousands of deaths. Ren Hong understood the truth and said, at this point, the Northern Army under the guardianship of the Grandfather became the key to victory or defeat. The Northern Army was the elite of the Han Dynasty's standing army, consisting of 8 brigades including garrison cavalry, infantry, Yu cavalry, Changshui, Hu cavalry, Shisheng, and Huban. Ren Shaoqing served as the commander of the garrison and was responsible for supervising the 8 brigades. More than 100 years ago, Captain Zhou Bo relied on seizing the talisman of the Northern Army to annihilate Chulu. So if Prince Wei wants to gamble, the first thing he needs to fight for is Ren Shaoqing, who comes from the Wei family and holds the military power of the Northern Army. Xia Dingmao scratched his head and said, these old servants don't quite understand, but at that time, Prince Wei did ride to the south gate of the Northern Army, summon the head of the family, give him a talisman, and order him to send troops. I followed the head of the family out of the camp, and the head of the family bowed to Prince Wei and accepted the talisman, but when he returned to the camp, he remained closed. It seems that Ren Shaoqing maintained a neutral attitude in this incident and did not help the crown prince or the military. He doesn't want to get involved in this fight between me and my son. The head of the family is deceiving the emperor by not sending troops, not meeting the crown prince, and not pursuing Emperor Xiaowu. But after the defeat of Prince Wei, the situation changed. The head of the family had previously whipped the Northern Army's grain officer for his mistake. The grain officer harbored resentment and took the opportunity to falsely accuse the head of the family, stating that he accepted the crown prince's talisman, promised to send troops, and demanded the position of the 9 ministers afterwards. However, he only gave up when he saw that the crown Prince Wei was not doing well. Xia Dingmao gritted his teeth and said, after hearing this, Emperor Xiaowu believed it to be true and believed that the head of the family was a seasoned official. When the crown prince rebelled, he wanted to sit and watch the success or failure, but whoever won would support him. He had a second heart. So he imprisoned and interrogated the head of the family, and after more than a month, he was executed. This is the life of Ren Shaoqing. Although Ren Hong had also heard about Xia Dingmao and his deeds in the past, this was the most detailed one. The Emperor. Ren Hong secretly wrote that Emperor Wudi's violent and changeable temperament was not nonsense. For example, in the disaster of witchcraft, the people who assisted Prince Wei were basically all killed. Ren Shaoqing and others who don't help each other have ulterior motives. Kill them. After the aftermath of the investigation, the group of people who had attacked Prince Wei's most diligent work, and the left Prime Minister Lu Qiuqian, were also brutally beheaded and exterminated. All right, as long as you stand with this, Your Majesty, and get caught up in this muddy water, no matter how you choose, you won't want to retreat completely. Even if Emperor Wu of Han died and General Hu Guang, who had a background of relatives of the Wei family, came to power, the witch Gu still had not overturned the case. Ren Shaoqing still bears the charge of being a rebellious minister. And Ren Hong, the son of a criminal official, was exiled to Dunhuang, imprisoned by the system, and his promotion was severely restricted. Xia Dingmao is getting old, and when he mentions his old master, he feels heartbroken. His tears wet the sand on his feet. The past is like this, making people cry and laugh at once. After comforting Xia Dingmao, Ren Hong continued to ask. Xia Weng knows where the Northern Army grain officer who falsely accused his father is now. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. One's Own Death. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 4. One's own death. That grain official can be said to be the sworn enemy of the Ren family. When mentioning this person, Xia Mao raised his head, his originally sorrowful face full of anger. He gritted his teeth and said, "After I arrived at Zhuangquanzi, I asked the people from Chang'an about it. I heard that the upright person was good at drilling into the camp and rose all the way by falsely accusing the head of the family for his merits. Now he is a county magistrate and official of 2,000 stones. This world is truly a world where loyalty and good are slaughtered, and evil are in power. 2,000 stones. Equivalent to later high-ranking officials." Ren Hong stood up and paced, then turned around and asked, "He probably forgot about me, the orphan of the Ren family, right? Or maybe I thought I couldn't endure the bitter cold of Dunhuang, or maybe because the children of the criminal officials who were exiled and imprisoned would find it difficult to regain power no matter how hard they tried. The mere suspension of a spring and the placement of assistants, facing the high-ranking officials of the frontier, is like a weak horse shaking a tree." Thinking of this, Xia Mao suddenly felt a little scared. Not afraid of what he might do, but afraid of Ren Hong's youthful vigor and potential for disaster. He continued to advise. "It's not too late for a gentleman to seek revenge in 10 years. While it's important to overturn the case and avenge the old master, it's even more important to leave behind the bones and blood of the Ren family. This matter is not urgent." Ren Hong did not answer, and it was a long time before he said, "Xia Wang. My eldest father's courtesy name is Shaoqing, and his name is An, right? Renan, this is the name of Ren Hong's grandfather. I once heard Xia Wang mention that his eldest father was a good friend of Ma Qian from the Taisher Company during his lifetime." "That's right," Xia Mao recalled. "The head of the family and Sima Zichang are inseparable friends. During the Taichu period, the two families had frequent exchanges. Sima Zichang had traveled throughout the country and liked to try different local flavors. In order to welcome him, the head of the family specially asked me to cook food from Shu County. Later, when Sima Zichang was imprisoned for the Li Ling incident, the head of the family even spoke on his behalf. Afterwards, the two of them did not have much interaction. When the head of the family was still serving as the governor of Izhou, he sent me to deliver a letter to the grand historian, accusing him of the righteousness of an ancient wise minister. However, Sima Zichang never replied to the letter. It was not until the head of the family was imprisoned and awaiting execution that Sima Zichang went to visit." Xia Mao pointed at Ren Hong and said, "By the way, when the old servant was outside, he was a gentleman and was in prison with the head of the family. Where am I?" Ren Hong thought carefully, but in his memory, there was no such scene at all. So what did Sima Qian and Renan say about the scene of bidding farewell? Ren Hong is completely unaware. Xia Mao gratefully said, "At that time, Sima Zichang had already become the minister of the Central Secretariat, and he had regained the trust of Emperor Xiaowu and was honored to serve. The old servant only heard afterwards that the Ren family had not been exterminated, and the gentleman was able to survive. Thanks to his intervention, the grand historian was a great benefactor of the Ren family. Surprisingly, there was still such a layer of relationship." Ren Hong nodded and said, "I will keep it in mind." What he thought to himself was, "Unfortunately, Taisher Gong has passed away for many years, otherwise I could have gone to Chang'an to seek refuge. But just think about it, because ordinary people want to go from Dunhuang to Chang'an, the process of applying for talismans from the government alone is so difficult that it makes you doubt your life. If you run away, there will be countless checkpoints waiting along the way." Thinking of this, Ren Hong mysteriously said to Xia Mao, "Actually, the grand historian once replied to his father." Xia Mao looked at Ren Hong and said, "How can a gentleman know?" Ren Hongdao said, "Half a year ago, after encountering a sandstorm, didn't I sleep for a few days? During that time, I had a dream. I dreamt of many things, including the farewell in prison between Taisher Gong and Dafu, as well as the reply letter written by Taisher Gong to Dafu. I vividly saw the sentence above. This matter was quite supernatural, and Xia Dingmao was somewhat surprised. He opened his eyes wide and said, "What words are they?" In front of me, a leaf of Populus euphratica gently drifted down. In the distance, there stands the timeless Chilean snow mountain proudly. Ren Hong whispered. He said, "Man is bound to die. Or lighter than a feather. Or heavier than Mount Tai." Xia Dingmao savored this sentence for a long time before saying, "I especially remember Sima Zichang's speech." Such words, like his words, are these what gentlemen heard and saw in prison when they were young? Perhaps so. Ren Hong is a ghost talk, as he clearly saw from the Bao Ren and Shu that was selected into Chinese language textbooks in later generations. The famous quote that often hangs on the walls of the classroom, "Who could have imagined that behind the final letter that Sima Qian failed to send, there was such a convoluted story?" He was filled with emotions in his heart, but continued to run the train on his lips. I thought that after many years, if this sentence could enter my dream, it must have profound meaning. Ren Hong said seriously, "Xia Wang, my eldest father has suffered injustice and is bleeding in the capital. We are implicated in the distant migration, and we have suffered many crimes and humiliations. My enemy has forgotten about us now, but what if one day he suddenly remembers? If I were content to be a petty official in the hanging spring, wouldn't I be easily crushed to death like a little ant in the future? I don't want to spend my whole life being imprisoned by unjust convictions and ultimately dying as light as a feather. What if the enemy who falsely accuses his father is only 2,000 stones? What if the tree is big and the roots are deep?" Ren Hong pointed to the ground and said, "I am just a small stone on the Dunhuang Gobi Desert now. But in the future, we must become a towering and weighty Chilean mountain, crushing our enemies to death." This is just an excuse to persuade Xia Dingmao. Even if there were no enemies of the Ren family and no unjustified injustice, since I could have come to this era, I should have left a mark in the long flow of time, rather than being silent. Xia Dingmao looked up at the young master, still remembering the arduous journey from Guangzhou to Dunhuang. In the wind and snow, he carried Ren Hong on his back, feeling so young and light. Unconsciously, he had become so tall. Truly worthy of being the descendant of Ren Shaoqing. Xia Dingmao strengthened his ambition and raised his thumb, saying, "The stubborn aura of a gentleman really resembles that of an old master." Speaking of which, Xia Dingmao suddenly understood something and said excitedly, "Since the sandstorm, the gentleman seems to have changed his personality, providing advice for the hanging spring and teaching the old servant many new dishes." At first, the old servant thought it was Mr. Zheng from Xiaogu County who had a great ability to bring such a big change to the gentleman, but later on, he found out that it was not so. As it seems today, is it also related to that dream? Indeed, it is the blessing of the old master. It must be my great father who has a spirit that has enlightened me. Ren Hong quickly changed the topic and said, "Now I am confined like my father, slowly accumulating achievements from a pavilion chief to a county magistrate, hoping to stand out from a small official. This path is no longer feasible." As for the way in which the Han dynasty selected local talents, he also had no connection with the 4 subjects of the imperial examination. In the words of future generations, "I can't even pass the political trial, so for now, there is only one path left. Catch up with the Han dynasty and reopen the wind of the western regions, break through this layer of confinement with extraordinary skills. Then try to return to Chang'an." The method of confinement is not applicable to military achievements. How to go further? Ren Hong has a long-term plan. As long as he guarantees to go to Chang'an within 3 or 4 years, he can catch up with the next once-in a lifetime trend. Because Ren Hong knew that General Hu Guang would have to play a big game in the future, "Gentlemen, please let go and do it. The old servant will spare his life and help you to the end." But Xia Dingmao also had some worries. A while ago, when the Western postal governor learned about the status of a gentleman, he gave up the idea of promotion. How can a gentleman make Fu Jiezi reward you? Can he take you on missions to the western regions in the future? Ren Hong was confident and said, I have my own way, but it will take a few days to prepare. I still need Xia Wang's help with this matter. Regarding the future of the young master, Xia Dingmao couldn't help feeling a little nervous. Then Fu Jiezi, how long will it take to return? Ren Hongdao said, the story of Fu Jiezi killing the Xiongnu envoy in Kucha has been brought back early by the Hu merchants on the Silk Road. As for himself, he is likely to arrive at Yumen Pass soon. That's why the central commander of Dunhuang sent Su Yannian and Chen Pengzu to meet him. Dunhuang County is located hundreds of miles east and west, with 9 residences. From Yumen Pass to this area, there are Longo residences, Dunhuang residences, and Zhiyao residences in sequence. Afterwards, there are Hanging Springs residences, which are located one after another according to the speed of vehicles and horses. 10 days. Ren Hong had the answer. At the latest, 10 days. Fu Jiezi will arrive at the Hanging Spring station. Before Ren Hong and Xia Dingmao could discuss the plan in detail, a short, black-faced man hurriedly walked out of the hanging spring and shouted loudly to them. Ren Jun, so you're here. But it was a soldier named LV Duoshu, who was dressed in coarse hemp and short kicks. He ran over and grabbed Ren Hong before leaving. Hurry up and follow me back. Zishifu is looking for you everywhere, saying there's something urgent. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. For Seasons and Monthly Orders. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 For Seasons and Monthly Orders, what a big deal. A moment later, Ren Hong had already stood under the north wall of the Hangquan Jiwu courtyard, with a smile on his face but a scolding in his heart. Originally, the miser urgently summoned Ren Hong back to work. Copying a court decree onto the wall, there's no way, who can let the hanging spring stand? Only 3 people can read, the other 2 are the chief executive appointed by Xianquan, Su Fengde appointed as a miser, and the chief minister appointed by the county to supervise the operation of the post station. Ji Cheng was also responsible for communicating with Dunhuang County and Xiaogu County, and he often disappeared from sight all day long. As for the miser Su Fengde, who is also a lazy old man, he said he only cares about big things and doesn't care about small things, so all the work of document copying is done by Ren Hong. For example, currently in Ren Hong's hands, there are hundreds of words in the imperial edict for the inspection of the messenger, and it may take half an hour to complete the copying. Ren Hong gently read the words above. The edict says that when one goes, yin and yang are not in harmony, and wind and rain are frequent, causing harm to the people and causing unrest. However, the emperor, Ming Wang, does not bow to the calendar of heaven, obeys yin and yang, and respectfully bestows blessings on the people to achieve a bountiful year. In June of the 3rd year of Yuanfeng's reign, Jia Zi. Ren Hong calculated that on the 3rd day of June, this edict was issued from Chang'an. By July 18, Dunhuang County had received a message, which was conveyed overnight to various lower-level institutions. Today, on July 19, it was delivered to the hanging spring, riding one horse after another. The post horses are like a stream of stars. In the morning, they shine in Xianyang, and at dusk, they reach the top of Longshan. This scene appeared before Ren Hong's eyes. From Chang'an to Dunhuang, it is nearly 2,000 kilometers, and it takes 45 days for a post horse to run, with an average of 50 kilometers per day. Based on the road conditions of the Han Dynasty, it is still acceptable. However, this is not yet the maximum speed of the postal station. In case of an emergency military situation, the station cavalry can travel hundreds of miles day and night, and can reach Chang'an in half a month. This is the speed of the Han Empire's policies from the central to the grassroots level. Thanks to post stations like Xianquanji, which spread throughout the country, they were able to feed their cavalry at any time and transmit urgent military orders and warm family letters from the mainland to the border, or from the border back to the mainland. As for the content of the edict, it is actually very simple and clear. Prohibition of logging, which means that no trees of any size can be harvested until August. If there are scattered plants and trees, they must be harvested. Wu Yao Fei, F.I., birds. It is said that the young bird cannot grow up, and it is forbidden to do so in December. After reading it, Ren Hong became happy and said, "Isn't this the environmental protection law?" The edict stipulates different taboos for the 4 seasons, such as the prohibition of logging in spring, the prohibition of hunting young animals, the prohibition of shooting birds, the prohibition of large-scale construction, and the prohibition of burning mountains and forests in summer. During the reign of Emperor Wu of Han, Confucianism was already revered and the 5 classics doctorate was established. The imperial decree issued by the court emphasized the inheritance of the Zhou. These 50 are selected from the monthly orders in the Book of Rites. In addition, politicians are more superstitious about the concept of harmony between heaven and man, believing that doing appropriate things in different seasons can ensure smooth weather. If they violate the rules, such as executing prisoners in spring and summer, it will lead to bad disasters. However, in Ren Hong's view, these regulations do have positive significance for Dunhuang County. At present, it is a warm period, and the vegetation in Dunhuang far surpasses that of later generations, but it still has fewer oases and forests, and more deserts and gobi. With the influx of immigrants and the cultivation of farmland, the population of Dunhuang has skyrocketed, with over 30,000 people. If, like in the south, indiscriminately burning and logging, the consequences would be terrifying. Don't laugh, in the northwest, sustainable development really has to start from ancient times. Regardless of whether anyone can understand and strictly abide by it, I will still copy it carefully and let the officials and soldiers in charge, as well as passers-by, know. Ren Hong asked for help and drew a column frame with ink lines on the wall. He also held a thick brush and transcribed the main text using the method of ink inscription. Ren Hong had studied calligraphy in his previous life, and after arriving in this era, he diligently studied and practiced. His handwriting was flat, stable, broad, and generous. Lu Duoshu, who was holding an inkstone next to him to assist him in setting up his post, couldn't help but praise him. Ren Jun's handwriting is really good. Ren Hong took 2 steps back and appreciated his achievements. Upon hearing the words, he smiled and said, "How do you know if it's good or not?" "I may not be able to read, but when I look straight and square, it looks good." Lu Duoshu whispered, "It's better than what a miser wrote." Ren Hong glanced at the hall and smiled, "Don't make him hear it." Su Fengde, a miser, is a bad old man. He is not bad, but he has a small heart. After finishing her good words, Lv Duoshu hesitated and said, "Ren Jun, if you have time, can you help me write a letter?" Although Ren Hong's wrist was a bit sore, he still agreed without hesitation. Generally, Ren Hong would not refuse such requests. During the Han Dynasty, with a population of over 40 million, 99% of the people were illiterate. Literate scholars were respected, but sometimes they took themselves too seriously and were also ostracized. Ren Hong is not a self-righteous scholar. He is more willing to take advantage of this insignificant advantage, make friends, and learn from them in exchange. A ruler has its own shortcomings and an inch has its own strengths. Even with 1,000 years of experience, Ren Hong is not good at things such as archery, horseback riding and driving, judging the number of people based on footprints, identifying wild plants, and even the simplest way to start a fire. There are only 2 ways to obtain fire these days: Ming Sui and Shi Sui, which require the use of bronze inscriptions and flint, both of which require great skill. The days without lighters and matches, really south. And this Lu Duoshu, although a small pawn who keeps a mouth around the miser, is also considered omnipotent. Not only can he drive oxen and carriages, but he often takes orders from the miser to go to Xiaogu County to buy goods, and occasionally helps himself. After returning to the ancestral hall and sitting down, Ren Hong asked Lv Duoshu who he wanted to write to. Lu Duoshu prepared the wooden slips himself and said, "My younger brother Lu Guangsu, he served in the Buguang Hoguan Pulu Sui. Dunhuang Commandery was a border area of the empire, with 4 military commanders in total. Yumen Commandery, Yanguan Commandery, Zhongzhong Commandery, and Iha Commandery. Under the 4 captains, there were also waiting officials, each responsible for overseeing the beacon towers at the 100-mile border. For example, under the central captains, there were 5 waiting officials. Ping Wang, Pe Hu, Bu Guang, Tun Hu, and Wan Sui. Below the waiting officials, there is a department, and there is a waiting chief in the department. Under the Ho Chang, there are the Sui Chang who guard each beacon, with 10 people each. This is the waiting system of Dunhuang County, which guards the borders of the empire, and any wind or grass is transmitted to the garrison troops through the smoke of war. Generally speaking, the garrison soldiers are appointed by the garrison soldiers from the mainland, but the waiting soldiers are mostly from the local hometown of Dunhuang. Lu Duoshu's letter was not long. It was just that the weather had turned cold and he wanted someone to send 2 winter clothes to his younger brother. He also told his younger brother that everything was fine at home and that he would visit his mother every time he took a break, so that his younger brother could serve well and not worry. Ren Hong finished writing 3 times, dividing 5 by 2, and looked up at Lv Duoshu, saying, "Your brother can read. Sui Chang will recite it to him." Lu Duoshu herself was a bit uncertain. "You should know, right?" After the matter was over, Lv Duoshu left with great gratitude, and Ren Hong's wrist was also sore. Registering symbols, transcribing edicts, categorizing the expense books of passers-by, and writing letters to the apprentices in the residence. These are the daily tasks of Ren Hong, seemingly trivial but also a microcosm of the administration of the Han Empire. He, like the other 36 people in the Hanging Spring Palace, is a small screw on the vast body of the empire. At this moment, Su Yannian and Chen Pengzu, who had finished their meal in the ancestral hall, happened to be accompanied by Su Fengde, the miser of the household, and walked out. Ren Hong stood up and arched his hand. "Su Sifu, 2 senior officials, can you still enjoy your meals? It's just ordinary." Chen Pengzu still looked like someone owed him money. However, Su Yannian exposed him and said, "Chen Weisher, speak with conscience. You almost ate the plate of sand onion and chicken just now, and you praised it endlessly." "I only got 1. He pointed to Chen Pengzu's lips and laughed, "Look, you still have ointment on your mouth." Chen Pengzu felt embarrassed and didn't care about his dignity. He quickly wiped the oil stains on his mouth with his sleeve. "Chicken is just an egg, with a market price of 3 yuan each, which is not cheap. Sha tsong is a common wild vegetable on the sandy land of Dunhuang. At present, the usual method for making scallions is to use salt to make cold dishes and dry rice, but hanging them in a spring is different." Su Yannian spoke to Su Fengde, the miser, and said, "In the past, officials and merchants have been spreading rumors that the food set up in the hanging spring is the best in Dunhuang. I see this statement is true. I flattered you, but it's just rough food." Su Fengde is over 50 years old and walks with a limp. He used to be a commander stationed at the border, but was injured while resisting the invasion of the Xiongnu. It was only then that he was arranged to serve as a miser in Xianquan for more than 10 years. At present, being praised by others, he is humble in his mouth, but his face is flushed with a little pride. Ren Hong knows that Mr. Su loves face. Originally, they were suspended in 9 housing estates in Dunhuang County, often ranking last due to poor hospitality and frequent deaths of horses. They were often criticized by postal inspectors, and every time they went to the county to seek advice, it was always the most embarrassing time for Su Fengde. Until half a year ago, when Ren Hong returned from studying in Xiaogu County, he gave him many novel suggestions. For example, when I went to the county town and found a blacksmith to make an iron pot, Ren Hong taught Xia Dingmao how to stir-fry food, which had a unique taste. For example, this scrambled egg with scallions is a masterpiece. Add some hot oil paste, the egg will be chopped with scallions, stir-fried over high heat until cooked, and the aroma is fragrant. Stir-fried dishes were introduced 1,000 years earlier, and the entire Han dynasty was unique. However, due to the high cost of ointment, the iron pot only makes a sound when officials eat it. But it was also enough to make the officials and envoys in contact repeatedly applaud, and even Su Fengde received more praise. He was no longer afraid to attend meetings in the county. As soon as he was happy, he promoted Xia Dingmao to become a kitchen miser, while Ren Hong was appointed as an assistant official. Su Yannian was still unsatisfied with the meal and touched his beard, saying, "It's a pity I have to leave, otherwise I really want to eat more." Su Fengde said, "When the two monarchs welcome Fu Gong back, the spring will be ready for dinner. Then there will be not only chickens, but also chickens." 2148 Su Yannian patted his slightly erect abdomen wrapped in armor and said, "Shan, I must come with an empty stomach." Due to inconvenience in his legs and feet, Su Fengde asked Ren Hong to take Su and Chen to the stable on his behalf. On the way, Ren Hong pretended to ask casually, "May I ask Su Jun and Chen Jun? I wonder when Duke Fu will be able to reach Hengquan." Chen Pengzu said, "We don't know the specific itinerary of Duke Fu, but you can wait for the county to send out the transmission letter. Generally speaking, important figures pass through post stations and are often rushed around. The county has to send people along each post 1 to 2 days in advance to convey information and prepare them for reception." He guessed it, not to mention Ren Hong, for a maximum of 10 days. The two of them got on the horse, and before Su Yannian left, he didn't forget to look back at Ren Hongdao. As a young scholar, Fu Gong admires young and brave warriors the most. When he reaches the hanging spring, he will surely be delighted to see you. P.S. The first Zisifu named Fengde was appointed in the first year of the reign of Emperor Xian of Han, 73 BC. The Four Seasons Moon Order was written on the north wall of the hanging spring, which is a remnant of the Wang Mang period. Please see the picture in the book circle. The speed of transmission of messages from the central to grassroots levels in the Han dynasty can be found in the Lost and Disappeared Transmission Handbook discovered in the 5th year of the Yongguang reign. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Most. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Most. Fu Jizi's appreciation of warriors is similar to what I had guessed beforehand. Ren Hong had already figured it out. Previously, the Western Postal Governor did not use me because he was a county official who sought stability in everything. Knowing that I was the son of an imprisoned criminal, he dared not take any risks. But what they lack in the generals and envoys rushing around in the desperate realm are the Qijie warriors. To put it bluntly, the legitimate children of officials and good families, who are willing to take risks in the western regions and live a good life. Zhang Qian went on 2 expeditions, and his team was mostly composed of corrupt youths from the county and country, as well as Qianhu from his vassal state and galloping criminals with various charges on their heads. They have one thing in common. Extreme evil. Barefoot is not afraid of wearing shoes. Only such people can work hard, be ruthless, and go all out. It is this group of people who, with fearless courage, marched towards the unknown world and forcefully hollowed out the western regions. This is a geographical discovery belonging to China. But having courage alone is not enough. To stand out, Ren Hong needs to show some other things, so Ren Hong immediately turned back to the hanging spring, only to see Su Fengde still standing at the door. He wore a loose crown on his head and stood out among the many headscarves in the hanging spring. Just now, in front of Su and Chen, Su Fengde was full of spring breeze, but now he has cooled down. When he saw Ren Hong, he said angrily, "Have you finished copying the edict?" Ren Hong pointed to the north wall and said, "We've all copied to the wall." Su Fengde blew his beard and glared, "Didn't you smash the pen this time?" Ren Hong smiled and said, "Did you hear me?" Su Fengde sneered and said, "In the place where the hanging spring is so big, you shout so loudly. Who didn't hear the people inside the place, the ones who set fire, the ones who stand guard, and the ones who feed horses. There aren't many pens in the storage room. If they're damaged, you'll have to pay for them. When old Su became excited, he stumbled under his feet. Don't worry, miser. I don't have much strength, my pen is not broken, it's not broken. Ren Hong came to help Su Fengde, but Su Fengde leaned over Ren Hong's shoulder and said earnestly. Husband, Nang has been busy with writing and inkstone for a long time. It is indeed the words of a brave man. Ren Hong, it seems that I can't fit you anymore because I have a small hanging spring. Su Fengde actually admires Ren Hong very much. In his opinion, this son is intelligent and clever. In the future, he can trust him with the support of Xianquan Ji. He even wanted to act as a matchmaker for his own daughter and let her marry Ren Hong. But recently he realized that Ren Hong is not someone who can stay in a small place for a lifetime. The impoverished and remote Gobi Desert cannot hold the hearts of young people. Their eyes always look out, either longing for the mysterious western regions or longing for the magnificent Chang'an. Ren Hong smiled and said, I have heard about the deeds of Fu Jiezi, and for a moment, I made a false statement. Don't take it to heart, stingy man. However, after Fu Jiezi's return from his mission, he will arrive at Xianquan Ji in 8 or 9 days. On the day of his arrival, how should Xianquan Ji entertain him in order to satisfy Fu Gong? Su Fengde disapproved and said, he's even harder to serve than that picky postal inspector. The dishes made by Xia Dingmao are also highly praised by the Western postal inspector. Ren Hong said, the postal governor is just a mere county official. How can he compare with the court envoys who hold the position of official? Moreover, last month, the miser even told everyone that he hoped that by the end of this year's countdown, Xianquan Ji could win the highest in the entire county. That's talk after drinking, I can't take it seriously. Su Fengde's old face turned a little red. After drinking, he always likes to talk big. But I have remembered it in my heart, and I have also taken note of the 2 and 3 sons in the house. Ren Hong said seriously, poor man, the performance of Xianquan Ji this year deserves to be the first in the whole county. This is related to the reputation of Xianquan Ji and the rewards from the people inside the Ji. In October, Dunhuang County will have its meritorious officials and postal supervisors conduct a large-scale comparison of the 9 established offices within its territory, and the top one will be praised, while the bottom one will be punished. The best reward is 2 big fat swine. Although the meat of pigs that have not been castrated in recent years is not as good as that of later generations, how can the poor soldiers in the house be choosy? Hanging in the spring for 3 days, killing sheep and chickens at 2 ends, but when they can truly enter their mouths, there are not many. Eating old fat every day is everyone's dream. Even if we don't kill or sell it, sharing it among everyone's heads is still a considerable amount. Ren Hong knows Su Fengde very well. This old man with a sharp tongue and a heart full of tofu, when it comes to his own future, he is indifferent and looks like a salted fish. But once it comes to the reputation of the hanging spring house and the interests of everyone inside the house, they will pay special attention. Sure enough, Su Fengde fell into the trap and pondered, although the Western postal governor verbally praised the Xianquan Ji, he has always had a connection with the Dunhuang Ji miser, and in previous years, he always awarded it to the Dunhuang Ji. If the Xianquan Ji wants to surpass the Dunhuang Ji, it will not be easy. The goose houses in the provincial capital are certainly better than those in the wilderness. If you want to win, you can only overtake on a bend. Ren Hongdao said, there is still an opportunity. Fu Jiezi made a name for himself in a foreign land and returned with honor. If the hanging spring could receive him well, it would be a political achievement that the county cannot ignore. Su Fengde also understood Ren Hong and looked up at him with a smile, saying, you little brat, what kind of devilish idea do you have? For the past 6 months, Su Fengde has become accustomed to Ren Hong's occasional new ideas. These ideas may seem bizarre, but in the end, they always bring benefits to the suspension spring. I have a plan that can make Fu Jiezi praise the hanging spring, and even ask for help from the court on behalf of us. Ren Hong bowed to him for a long time and said, I only hope that my humble husband can give me full authority to handle this matter. Yesterday, Su Sifu instructed me that from today on, everyone in the East Kitchen will be at their disposal. If you need anything, just give orders. On the afternoon of July 20th, after finishing his daily duties, Ren Hong stood outside the granary, waiting for the kitchen assistant Zoro, who was of the same rank as him, to open the door of the granary. The kitchen assistant named the little dog, this is not cursing, it was taken by my parents. Dogs are one of the 6 livestock, loyal and obedient, and thus became a beloved lowly name among the Han Dynasty people. For example, Sima Xiangru, a courtier of Emperor Wu of Han, used to be called Guzi, but later changed his name to Talented People due to his admiration for Lin Xiangru. If left unchanged, there will be a beautiful story in history of Sima Guzi picking Zhuo Wenjun. Luo Xiaogo is actually not small at all, tall and sturdy, and he has to bend down to enter the small granary porch. The granary placed in a suspended spring is close to the well because it is the most deadly place in the event of fire, but it is also afraid of water, making it difficult to preserve grains in a humid environment. So the tiles on the top of the granary are the best and densest in the entire suspended spring, and the eaves are on all sides to prevent rainwater. Due to the dryness of Dunhuang, it is not necessary to make the bottom of the southern granary into a dry column style, but still use rammed earth as the foundation, just in case. There is a skylight on the thick wall to allow the newly harvested grain to breathe and ripen, but it is also covered with red willow woven bamboo strips. Although there are not many birds in Dunhuang, if you fly in one, you can eat a round belly. After the warehouse door opened, dust danced in the wind under the sunlight, but inside were large earthenware jars arranged side by side, covered with thick wooden covers. Ren Hong went in and turned around, suddenly squatting down, pinching a black, hard object, but it was a piece of mouse droppings. He lifted his head and looked at the lazy civet cat lying on the eaves of the granary skylight, helplessly saying, Xiaoqi, you're slacking off again. Have you been feeding you too much lately? P.S. Thank you again for yesterday's recommendation of the reward chapter, as well as the 3 alliance leaders. Lao Dao, old friend Bodhi Dugong, and a certain Mr. Ji who did not want to be named. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. What I Found. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. What I Found. Xiaoqi is a black and gray spotted beaver slave, also known as the Chinese beaver cat. Its ancestor was a native cat named Miao Star, who started catching mice for humans as early as the spring and autumn period and the Warring States period. This cat owner, just as proud as 2,000 years later, didn't pay attention to Ren Hong. He just lazily yawned, stood up, took small steps to the edge, jumped lightly, and somehow jumped into a gap. Ren Hong laughed and cursed, sooner or later, throw out this poor rat catcher. Luo Xiaogo gritted his teeth and said, I've been wanting to stew it for a long time, but the cat meat isn't delicious. It's like this, but isn't it the little dog Luo who secretly brings food to Li Nu on weekdays? Don't be fooled by his thick appearance, with a beard all over his face. He laughed happily when feeding the cat. This cat-dog combination is really interesting. Ren Hong didn't expose it either. He continued to move forward, uncovering the wooden lid of the earthenware jar. Inside were grains such as unhulled millet, wheat, and beans, packed to the brim. In the Han Dynasty, except for rice mainly produced in the south, all the hanging springs were set up, totaling over 100 stones, equivalent to 3,000 kilograms, which is enough for a delegation of over 100 people to eat for a month. Ren Hong is most concerned about the storage capacity of one of them. I remember the last time when grain was registered for warehousing, there were still quite a few lamai. Luo Xiaogo said, there are still 30 stones left, and there is plenty more. Limai is wheat, although also one of the 5 grains, it has never been favored by the people of the Central Plains. Because the surface of wheat is covered with a layer of bran, when steamed and eaten with grains, it is very hard and rough, and it is easy to feel bloated, and even food poisoning may occur due to wheat sprouting due to moisture, which is far less safe and delicious than using millet and rice. So from a very early age, wheat has been the food for the poor, and some noble officials even consider eating wheat during mourning as simple filial piety. However, by the time of Emperor Wu of Han, the situation had changed. Because the cultivation of winter wheat, also known as winter wheat, has matured and is planted in autumn and harvested in the following summer, it can help impoverished farmers who are struggling to survive and prevent them from starving to death. It is considered a good crop for emergency relief. Decades ago, the great Confucian scholar Dong Zhongshu also wrote an article titled, "Begging the People of Guanzhong to Plant Wheat." Later, Emperor Wu of Han ordered the Grand Minister of Agriculture to take the lead and vigorously promote the cultivation of wheat in Guanzhong. In addition, due to the cold resistance of wheat, under the leadership of a search captain named Zhao Guo, the newly developed Heshi corridor was also widely planted, with an area second only to millet. Nevertheless, wheat, as a coarse grain, has not yet shaken off its position as the last grain. In terms of price, it is one level lower than other grains, and the only cheaper option is beans, which are also commonly consumed by livestock. But Ren Hong, on the other hand, prefers this large, well-managed, and affordable wheat. He patted the large tile jar filled with wheat and said, "Please ask Chef Luo to take out 5 stones of wheat and grind them all." Adjacent to the granary is the area for processing grains. A row of pestles, wooden pestles, and stone pestles are used to husk and remove the husk from the grains. There are also a few treadmills that can be stepped on with feet. Thank goodness, since these things have already appeared in the Han dynasty, there is no need for Ren Honglai to invent them. Pounding rice is a tedious and tiring job, usually done by criminals and laborers. People are divided into 3, 6, and 9 levels, and rice is also divided into 4 levels based on the precision and thickness of pounding. The best rice is called yumi, and the rest are in order of barnyard rice, Bai, ken rice, Can, and rough rice, provided to travelers of different levels. In addition, there are 2 large stone mills, which are said to have been invented by Liu Ban and have a long history. Although they were originally used to grind wheat, they were not widely circulated. It was not until the reign of Emperor Wu of Han that a large-scale wheat planting was carried out in Guanzhong, and the common people had no choice but to deal with the difficult-to-chew wheat that the stone mill entered every household. Food made from wheat flour is called cake by the Han people. Boiling it in a kettle with water is called soup cake, and steaming it in a steamer is called steamed cake. It is often sold in Dunhuang. Also, after frying, it is stuffed into the mouth with water, similar to the tsamba, zinba, also known as bai, is often used as a military food reserve. There are quite a few types, but currently, due to the rough flour and monotonous cooking methods, the taste is not commendable, and we also have to face the deep-rooted Chinese grain food tradition. So, noodles are still just a concubine on the table, completely unable to shake the seats of various types of rice grains in the main room. However, the stone mill set in the hanging spring was renovated by Ren Hong. The originally simple concave-shaped grinding teeth were adjusted by him to the 8-zone diagonal line grinding teeth commonly seen in later northern stone mills. Due to proper density and orderly arrangement, the efficiency and quality of grinding are greatly improved, resulting in much finer wheat flour compared to other areas. At present, Luo Xiaogo is greeting a few people to drive donkeys to grind noodles, but Ren Hong naturally cannot wait for them. On the other end of the east kitchen courtyard, the chef Xia Dingmao has already started kneading noodles with water using ready-made wheat noodles. The water used is from a hanging spring 2 kilometers away. After being drawn, it is stored in a water tank, clear and cold. It is mixed with the not too fine yellow noodles and then beaten into an egg. Xia Dingmao used to never wash his hands before cooking, but recently he changed this old habit after listening to Ren Hong's words. I saw the yellow dough kneading and deforming under his strong hands, finally forming a flat circular large dough and placing it in a pottery bowl. When Ren Hong came over, Xiaowang asked. "Gentlemen, do you want to face death or face death? Just send a message." Xia Dingmao was curious and said, "What kind of food does the gentleman want his old servant to make?" Ren Hong smiled without answering, and Xia Dingmao began to guess one by one. Donkey meat with yellow noodles. Huyang braised cake. That's not right, is it just rubbing fish roe? What Xia Dingmao ordered were all Dunhuang snacks from 2,000 years later. Under the guidance of Ren Hong, most of them were made in the kitchen of Xianquanji. With a frying pan and a variety of dishes, Xianquanji became widely known in the county within 6 months. Compared to the brown rice under big sauce these days, it is indeed too delicious. Su Fengde, who has always been an independent homemaker, has the courage to compete for the title of the first homemaker in the county. Ren Hong smiled and said, "It's something I haven't done before. As for what it is, Xia Wang will know later. However, I still need something that can add color to it." As he was speaking, a shout came from the entrance of the hanging spring. "Ren Jun. What do you want? I bought it from the county and city." Ren Hong walked out the door and happened to see LV Duo Shu driving an old horse-drawn carriage, parked outside the hanging spring. Lu Duo Shu took a leave yesterday evening and went to Xiaogu County to visit her mother. She sent out a letter and clothes for her younger brother, and also helped Ren Hong buy some things. After getting off the car, he picked up several small bags in the carriage with both hands and carefully handed them over to Ren Hong. This item has been found in every county and city, and as Ren Jun said, it can only be found in the place where medicinal herbs are sold. These small bags are yellow-brown in color, and as for their material, they are fine and tough, like linen, but not linen. That's right, theoretically, it wasn't until the Eastern Han Dynasty over 100 years later that Kai Luan invented paper. Several paper bags used to hold items appeared prominently in front of Ren Hong. Not only that, but they also had 2 characters written on them with a brush that was crooked and crooked. It's not cannibalism, but rather sesame. Ren Hong was not surprised by the emergence of paper in this era. Everyone sits down, everyone sits down. What's so strange about this? Although they are just a small post station on the border, 2,000 years later, it will be the place where China's earliest paper documents were discovered, right? In the room dedicated to storing bamboo slips, Ren Hong dug out several sheets of hemp paper with many words written on them while organizing the documents. Iron evidence is overwhelming, indicating that Kai Luan only improved his papermaking technique. Prior to this, rough hemp paper had appeared in Guangzhou since at least the Wenjing era, later known as Baqiao paper, while the Han people referred to it as Ti. There are also many paper sheets in Dunhuang County, and Ren Hong has also inquired about their sources and found that they mostly come from the weaving rooms of the government, where a large number of needles, threads, and scraps of cloth are produced every day. In order not to waste, an unknown craftsman cut them up, steamed them, pounded them, and made the first piece of paper was invented from this, but no one remembers the craftsman's name. Due to their rough texture, these ancient papers are not suitable for writing and are mostly used to wrap fine objects. There are many in the Eastern kitchen, with names such as aconite and asarum written on them, which are obviously used to wrap medicinal herbs. These few bags in his hand are no exception. What Ren Hong really needs is sesame wrapped in paper balls. Ren Hong gently opened the paper bag, which was filled with flat and small black particles. That's right, it's indeed top-quality black sesame. This thing is a typical alien species, said to have been brought back from Dewan by Zhang Qian during his mission to the western regions. Xia Dingmao also came out and was surprised to see Huma. Do gentlemen want to decoct medicine? Since the return of Zhang Qian, Han people have been fond of lifting sesame seeds, but decades have passed and these things have not been used as food. Instead, they have been used as medicinal herbs. Poor Ren Honggang, when he first arrived in the Han dynasty, was infused with a lot of sesame soup by doctors. It is said that it can nourish the 5 internal organs, nourish qi, grow muscles, and fill the marrow and brain. Ren Hong likes the southern black sesame paste very much, but the taste of sesame soup is really commendable. Ren Hong explained, it's not for medicine, but to sprinkle it on the food that will be made later, it will be even more fragrant. Xia Dingmao's mind still didn't turn around and said, what exactly does a gentleman want to do? He needs to add medicine to induce it. Ren Hong had no choice but to unravel the mystery. Nong. Roast nong. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Easy to heat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Easy to heat. When Su Fengde, the miser, walked out of the hanging spring with his hands behind his back, it was bustling outside. On the open space outside the hanging spring, there is an additional 4-foot-high square earthen stove built with green bricks, with a large belly and small mouth, resembling an inverted water tank. The outside is covered with clay mixed with wool, and there is a ventilation port at the bottom. This was built by Ren Hong yesterday with the permission of Su Fengde and his disciples in the suspended spring. It was early autumn, and the weather in Dunhuang was scorching hot. After only 1 day and night, the inside and outside of the earthen stove were completely dry and ready for use. At present, the fire in this stove is burning vigorously, with firewood constantly being thrown in and the walls of the pit burning hot. After the open fire disappeared, Xia Dingmao finally put in the already rolled out 20 or so dough pieces. Su Fengde leaned over to take a look, only to see that the flat and round yellow dough was sprinkled with some black sesame seeds on the surface, and the edges of the bread had been pinched and perforated according to Ren Hong's requirements. The dough is tightly attached to the circular pit wall, and when it is finished, a piece of cooked cowhide is used to cover the top of the pit. Then Ren Hong and others ignored everything and just boasted and farted on the side. Is that all for now? Su Fengde was a bit stunned. The innovative eating methods proposed by Ren Hong in the past all had to be vigorously stir-fried in front of an iron pot, with various additives. Eating delicious dishes was time-consuming and laborious, and the dishes made were of great value. Only when entertaining officials and guests could they be put on the table. Why is it so simple today? Just wait a moment. Ren Hong was full of confidence. Roasted nong was the most authentic food in the western regions. In his previous life, when he was running in the western regions, he ate it almost every day and had seen the recipe countless times with his own eyes. Today, he only made the simplest one, neither brushing oil nor baking it twice. Su Fengde still had doubts. This sesame is medicine, can it be put together with the cake? Ren Hongdao said, a few months ago, the miser also said that garlic is medicine, spicy and unpleasant to eat. He refused to eat it. How is it now? Garlic is garlic, also an exotic species brought back by Zhang Qian from the western regions. Currently, it is only used as a medicinal herb. Medical practitioners in the Central Plains believe that this substance could penetrate the 5 internal organs, reach the various orifices, dispel coldness and dampness, and ward off evil. However, postal and messenger travelers traveling along the Silk Road often carried a bag of garlic with them. Once they suffered from heatstroke, they would chew a piece of garlic and water together that taste, let alone sour and refreshing. The person who ate it for the first time probably had tears all over their face due to the spiciness. Ren Hong has never tried it before. He only knows that once someone talks to you with a strong garlic flavor, it is likely a postal courier who frequently travels far away. At least in Dunhuang County, Ren Hong was the first person to add garlic to the dish. After smashing the garlic cloves and adding them to the boiling oil, he stir-fried them in a pot. Whether it was stir-frying vegetables or meat, the taste became even more delicious. Eating noodles means there's no need for garlic. There are no 2 foods in the world that match perfectly, like garlic and noodles. Ren Hong forgot which celebrity had said this, it wasn't Lu Sun. At first, Su Fengde refused garlic, but he couldn't resist Xia Dingmao's recommendation and tried it once. From then on, it became uncontrollable. Now, Su Fengde was able to skillfully peel a few heads of garlic before every meal, waiting for the noodles to come out of the pot while peeling. Sure enough, there is only a difference between 0 and countless times people in the Northwest eat garlic. And upon closer inspection, sesame, garlic, fava beans, coriander, cucumber, pomegranate, walnuts, and grapes were all introduced one after another after hollowing out the western regions. Therefore, Marquis of Baoang Zhangqian is truly a timeless hero and national hero of the foodie country. After Ren Hong used garlic as an analogy, Su Fengde remained speechless, shook his head, and returned to the shadow of the hanging spring gate. He had someone spread a mat and wait for Ren Hong's masterpiece. I want to see what you can do. However, in Ren Hong's opinion, the old guy is just greedy and wants to taste it as soon as it's cooked. Waiting is also waiting, so Ren Hong held a bag of sesame seeds and gave Su Fengde another suggestion. Various types of sesame seeds. Su Fengde squinted his eyes and said, "Why? I'm hanging a spring and not opening a pharmacy. I asked the people who are farming in Xiaogu County a while ago." Ren Hong patiently explained, "They say that any land that has been planted with sesame in the first year will inevitably have fewer diseases, more fertile soil, and higher yields in the following year. This shows that it can increase the soil fertility and kill insects. Isn't Sifu planning to open more than 100 mu of new land near the Xianquan River? Try planting flax first." Hanging Spring originally only had over 100 acres of land and did not grow food. It was only used as a vegetable bed, with some onions, chives, sunflowers, etc. planted to ensure vegetable self-sufficiency. However, with the increasing number of tourists traveling to and from Heshi, it has become insufficient. If it's true as you said, you can give it a try. Seeing Su Fengde loosen his grip, Ren Hong was very happy. The price of sesame seeds is not cheap. If we could plant dozens of acres of sesame seeds every year, there would be no need to worry about the sesame seeds needed for hanging springs to roast nang. Sesame has other great uses, such as oil extraction. Nowadays, the oil mainly comes from refining animal fat, but even domesticated animals are very thin and have little oil and water. As for vegetable oil, peanuts are still in distant America, and the rapeseed flower that bloomed by Qinghai Lake in later generations is also an exotic species. Ren Hong has not yet seen it, and it is unknown whether it has been introduced to the Central Plains. So the only oil crops currently available are soybeans and sesame. If we can start from the hanging spring, we can plant sesame seeds widely and let white sesame fried dough twists flowers bloom all over the river. In that case, in a few years, Ren Hong may be able to drink sesame oil, and even dip sesame sauce into instant lamb. Upon this thought, he was feeling a bit hungry. He looked up at the sun, and by the time he finished his lunch, 15.00 to 16.30, it had already arrived. At this moment, Su Fengde's nose moved. "It smells so good." Ren Hong also smelled it, which was the burnt aroma of ripe wheat flour and the strong aroma emitted after sesame baking. He looked at the pit of naan and clapped his hands, saying with a smile, "The naan is ripe." Even when it was time to cook, the temperature of the naan pit was still scorching hot. Xia Dingmao suppressed a lot of sweat, held a pair of tongs, and took out the naan one by one, while Chase Waluo's little dog held a basket and continued. "But I saw that the roasted naan had been completely dehydrated and the sugar had degraded, giving it a burnt yellow color and a strong wheat aroma." Luo Xiaogo was so greedy that his saliva was almost flowing down. He couldn't hold back for a moment and reached out to get it, only to touch it but let out a cry. "It's so hot, so hot." Xia Dingmao turned his head and scolded him, "Little dog, the new food is out of the oven, and it needs to be tasted by the elders. Did you forget? You deserve it. I'm going to give Su Shifu a try, isn't it?" Luo Xiaogo then brought the red willow basket containing more than 10 nangs to Su Fengde and smiled, "Su Shifu, try it. How dare you speak so loudly? Su Fengde was very disgusted and even started learning Confucius, refusing to eat properly. Ren Hong took out the knife he carried with him, cut the large piece of bread into small pieces, and presented it to Su Fengde. Su Fengde looked at the golden roasted naan on the plate, his throat twitched, and he picked up a piece and put it into his mouth. The entrance has a rich aroma of wheat, crispy skin, and chewed until the roasted sesame is fully cooked, it is so fragrant and satisfying. Because the noodles were mixed with some salt and had a slight salty taste, swallowing them gave a satisfying feeling of fullness. How about it? Everyone looked at Su Fengde, only to see him nibbling and eating several pieces in a row, taking a sip of water, and then calmly saying, "Delicious is delicious, but it's too dry and not good for old teeth. This damn old man." The others also started, and the little dog, who had been waiting for a long time, directly held onto a naan and ate it. It looked unsightly, bulging its cheeks and exclaiming that it was delicious. Ren Hong sighed is the correct way to eat naan, slowly breaking it with his hands and sharing it with Xia Dingmao. Chef Xia Dingmao also believes that this product has an excellent taste. It is even better than soup cakes and steamed cakes, and can be comparable to the braised cakes and braised fish of the scholars' sect. After all, the soup cakes of these days are not noodles, they are just cooked and broken, similar to the steamed buns of later generations. Without rich lamb soup, it is indeed difficult to swallow. Ren Hong smiled and said, "Today is just the simplest. In fact, there are more ways to make it. For example, you can apply some oil and sprinkle a handful of scallions on the dough, making it crispy and fragrant. You can even brush beef and mutton milk, add pu tao, and add meat filling. Pu tao is like grapes. In the western regions of later generations, there were not only grape naan, but also everything could enter naan. Naan was not actually invented by Ren Hong. Its direct ancestor was called hu bing, which had already appeared and was the staple food of the oasis city-states in the western regions. Ren Hong once tried hard and tried to persuade the stranded hu merchant to teach him how to make primitive hu pancakes. However, he was still in the simplest stage of burying pancakes by the fire, and the flour was also very rough. In terms of taste, it was completely exploded by the naan they had just made. After everyone finished eating 3 pieces of naan, Su Fengde called Ren Hong over and said, "Ren Hong, let me tell you, this dish is delicious to eat, but what does it have to do with entertaining Fu Jiezi and making Xianquan Ji the highest official in the county this year? Dare to tell the miser." Ren Hong swallowed the last bite of naan and said with a smile, "If you don't add chicken, noodles, or sesame, it's actually very cheap and the grilling method is simple. But even the simplest way to make it is to bake naan, which is more embarrassing than being used as military rations for Han soldiers. You, and bai is delicious and easier to carry, isn't it?" After a busy day, by the time Ren Hong returned to his residence, it was already the time of the night eclipse, from 21.00 to 22.30, and the northwest sun was setting late, which would have just turned dark. Although ordinary people only have 2 meals a day these days, there are exceptions. Border guards on duty at night, and post drivers and soldiers who rush overnight have the power to have an extra meal, so they have become customized. There are night watchmen on the wall of the dock, who are eating leftover baked nana from the afternoon. This thing can be stored for a long time, and it won't be a problem for 10.5 days. The hanging spring is located inside and outside, with a total of 27 rooms, of which 15 are makeshift houses for guests to stay and eat. After excluding the kitchen, office, and warehouse for storing documents, the remaining few should be evenly distributed among more than 30 people, which is obviously impossible. So within the suspended spring, only Su Fengde, the miser, had a separate room. Ordinary disciples and soldiers needed to sleep in a large bunk, while Ren Hong and other petty officials lived in pairs. Ren Hong and Xia Dingmao lived in the same room, which was small and narrow, with not much furniture placed in it. There were only 1 bed on each side, and there was a table in the middle with a small copper lamp on it. These days, the oil and oil are precious, and the lamps and candles cannot be lit easily, making the surroundings dim. Xiaowing kneaded the noodles all day today and baked naan in the scorching heat. He didn't say a word of bitterness, but in fact, he was exhausted and fell asleep soundly after returning. Ren Hong, however, couldn't sleep. The bed was covered with 2 layers of straw and an additional layer of mat, which was still a bit hard. He tossed and turned, thinking about the day. Today, Su Fengde, a miser, understood Ren Hong's plan when he heard that he was comparing roasted naan with the military rations commonly eaten by Han soldiers. Do you want to offer this item to Fu Jiezi? But before Ren Hong could explain his plan in detail, Su Fengde yawned and said to him, "You don't need to tell me in detail. You can keep these words and behave well in front of that Duke Fu." After finishing speaking, he turned around and left, calling on the people in the hanging spring to share the 20 or so grilled naans and leaving a sentence for Ren Hong. "Since you have full authority to handle this matter, I don't care about anything, old man." This delegation of power was also thoroughly carried out, which left Ren Hong a bit stunned. It was still Xia Dingmao who said to him. "Su Sifu is known for his unpleasant words, but he keeps thinking about managing the hanging spring well and showing concern for the people in the facility. Even the gentleman is no exception. After all, Su Sifu has also watched the gentleman grow up." Although in the past, Su Sifu intended to let the gentleman stay in the hanging spring, since the gentleman's decision to leave has been made, he also hopes that you can fulfill your wish. Xia Dingmao sighed and said, "More than 10 years ago, I brought a gentleman to Dunhuang and settled in the hanging spring. Thanks to Su Sifu's accommodation, I thought this place was filled with harsh and cold conditions, and all the people were extremely evil and poor. But I didn't expect that many of the people I met were kind-hearted." Ren Hong silently memorized these words in his heart and swore to himself, "Even if I leave this place, I will never forget the hanging spring pavilion, let alone the people here." According to Ren Hong's speculation, Fu Jiezi still has 7 or 8 days to arrive, and his preparation is still in time. As the night deepened, Ren Hong's eyelids began to fight and he fell asleep on the bed. I don't know how long it took. It was probably because the chicken had already crowed twice before he was awakened by a sudden sound of horse hooves. Suddenly, a loud shout came from the entrance of the hanging spring. "Open the door quickly. The county government has sent a message to deliver it." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Delivery Guy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Delivery Guy. 2000 years later, the delivery person won't come so early. Ren Hong roast while putting on a robe and hurried out. The temperature difference between day and night in Heshi area is large, and the Dunhuang Gobi is extremely hot in the daytime, but it is cold in the early morning. The courier knocking on the door outside was welcomed in by the night watchman. Under the light of the pine torches, a face tanned by the sun was reflected, and sweat solidified sand and salt particles on the face. This is the delivery guy from the Han Dynasty, wearing a soap towel on his head, a wide-sleeved shirt with a right collar, boots on his feet and a red and white bracelet on his back. Not to mention, it looks a bit like a package from JD.com. The courier's lips were cracked and his eyes were bloodshot. After bowing to Ren Hong, he took out a red lacquered wooden box from the bracelet hanging from his body. The county government needs to personally hand over the letter to the magistrate for inspection. In addition, I hope you can prepare a new horse for me, and I need to rush to the next place later. Please follow me. Ren Hong has received night travelers several times and is familiar with his business. He calls for the eastern kitchen to pour water and prepare food, while also asking the stable assistant to prepare horses. On the way to the office of Zisifu, Ren Hong asked the courier where he came from, but found out that he had only departed from Dunhuang early yesterday morning and traveled 130 miles a day to reach Swanquanzi. So fast, it should be urgent. By the time they reached the usual office and banquet hall, Su Fengde had already limped down the stairs. His official robe was not properly worn, and the loose crown on his head was a bit crooked. Su Fengde straightened his clothes, took the red-painted wooden box with both hands, respectfully placed it on the table, and opened it in front of the postman. At this moment, all the lamps on the bronze lamp stand were lit, and the hall was already flickering with light and shadow. But inside the lacquered box, there were 2 tightly pasted bamboo slips, 1 foot and 5 inches long, and stamped with ink seals. 1 at each end and 1 in the middle. 3 passengers. Ren Hong watched attentively from the side, his eyelids twitching uncontrollably. The Han family has a well-established system for transmitting letters, ranging from 1 letter to 5 letters, representing different reception standards. 1 letter for riding horses, 2 letters for carrying horses, 3 letters for carrying horses, 4 letters for carrying horses, and 5 letters for placing letters. To be specific, it may be a bit complicated, so it's better to apply Ren Hong's summary. A letter of chicken and garlic, 2 letters of chicken and dog jumping, 3 letters of killing pigs and slaughtering sheep. Correspondingly, it corresponds to the level of busyness of the suspended spring device in handling different specifications of booklets. In short, after receiving the 3 letters of transportation, Xianquan Ji will prepare a public carriage with 4 horses dismounting, and several pieces of pork, sheep, and chicken wine. This posture definitely did not come from an ordinary person. According to Ren Hong's experience, either officials with a rank of more than 2,000 stones, such as Yuman and Yangguan captains, were appointed, or envoys from the imperial court who belonged to the 9 ministers passed by before he could think deeper. Su Fengde had already ordered. Ren Hong, for the seal. No. Ren Hong is familiar with opening the closet, taking out the inkpad to be backed up for each house, and comparing it with the seal on the brochure, confirming that it is exactly the same. He lifted his head and said, "Poor man, it is indeed the seal of an imperial censor." Su Fengde checked it again and asked, "What time is it now?" Ren Hong had just asked the night watchman that even the latest rooster had already crowed for a long time, and the sky was still dark. Therefore, he reported, "July Ji Mao, what day?" Unlike later generations who believed that in ancient times, no matter which dynasty it was, there were always 12 hours. At least in the Heshi corridor, people used the 16-hour system, with 16 hours in a day. Starting from 0.00, they are midnight, rooster crowing, morning time, weekday, sunrise, flea feeding, eclipse time, day before noon, day afternoon, night afternoon, day in, dusk, night after, and human fixed. And setting up such a post station in Xianquan further subdivides time into 30.2. For example, dividing the morning time, 3.30 to 4.30, into 2 points. Rooster crowing and several days. Because they must confirm the specific time of arrival and departure for each transmission, and if it is not precise enough, any future incidents will be held accountable. So Ren Hong thinks that there is still a lack of a position to loudly sound the gong and report the time for the 32nd hour scale of the hanging spring. After confirming the correctness of the seal and recording the time, Su Fengde gently opened the transmission. He scanned the words on it, his eyes wide open, and then gave Ren Hong a fierce glare. The message was handed to Ren Hong. "Record it quickly." Ren Hong agreed and knelt on the mat, ready to write, but upon seeing the transmission, he was stunned. In the 8th month of the 2nd year of the Yuanfeng reign, on the day of Gue Hai in the 8th month, the Grand Minister Ma Chengwang and the Imperial Censor Chen Xian, respectively, issued an edict to serve as the Imperial Censor, stating, Juanma Jianfu Jiezi was appointed as the envoy to the northwest country. The Imperial Censor Xian Xia established stable houses in various counties such as Youfu Feng, Longxi, Anding, Wuwei, Zhangye, Jiuquan, and Dunhuang, and entrusted them with the task of carrying out the imperial edict. He entrusted them with the task of passing on the imperial edict, and entrusted them with the task of carrying on the 3 imperial edicts, just like laws and regulations. This is the standard format for the transmission of documents during the Han Dynasty. 1 year ago, General Huo Guang ordered the Imperial Censor's office to issue an order, which means that all the guest houses in the counties along the way must receive the imperial envoy Fu Jiezi who went to the western regions according to the specifications, regardless of whether he came. It's not wrong. There is already a copy of a similar transmission record in Hangquanji, which Ren Hong has repeatedly reviewed. That time was a record of going to the western regions, and now seeing this message again means that Fu Jiezi has already returned. The words of the courier further confirm this point. Fu Ma Jian has arrived at the county government, and he is in a hurry to return to Chang'an. He only rested overnight in the city of Dunhuang and will be heading east early in the morning. The county governor and postal inspector ordered me to rush ahead of them and notify all the stations along the way to prepare for reception in sequence. Ren Hong hurriedly asked the courier. When will Supervisor Fu Ma come to Xianquan? We can kill sheep and kill swine in time. Tomorrow, it's not right. The courier poured a sip of water into his mouth and shook his head. It's July Ji Mao, this evening. The courier hurriedly ate and drank, and his face was stimulated with cold water. He didn't care about resting, so he stepped onto the new post horse and left. He carried a red and white backpack with a messenger on his shoulder, held up the pass symbol with one hand high, pursed his mouth tightly, and rode the red mane horse like an arrow, heading eastward to sweep away the dust. He still has to rush to the next station, changing horses without changing people, and must run all the way to Jiuquan County in the east to complete his mission. At this moment, the horizon had already revealed a white fish belly. Su Fengde watched as the courier went away, but suddenly turned around and wanted to kick Ren Hong, but he flexibly avoided it. Su Fengde was so angry that he cursed. You little brat, didn't you say that Fu Jiezi still has 8 or 9 days to arrive? Ren Hong explained, it's reasonable to say so. It's all because Su Yannian and Chen Pengzu went too late, which caused me to miscalculate the time. There is no telegram these days, and even if both sides agree on a specific time, it is common for them to meet a few days apart. After all, even the Marquis of Baoang, Zhang Qian, who was familiar with the land of Hu and could automatically find his way, could have lost his title too late when fighting against the Xiongnu. But on the other hand, Fu Jiezi only arrived at Yumen the day before yesterday and arrived at Dunhuang City. Today, he has to run to Zhuangquanzi, which is too rushed. Dunhuang County is located hundreds of miles east and west, with 9 residences. From Yumen Pass to this area, there are Longo residences, Dunhuang residences, and Zhiyao residences in sequence. After that, there are Hanging Springs residences, located approximately every 60 miles, with 1 stop per day. But Fu Jiezi ran at a speed of 2 stops a day. Is Fu Jiezi in a hurry to return to Beijing to take the exam? Ren Hong muttered to himself, just as he was about to discuss countermeasures with Su Fengde. To his surprise, this terrible old man also had a big heart and yawned, saying, I don't care, you have already taken care of this matter. Whether Fu Jiezi arrives today or tomorrow, you have prepared everything for me. He even patted Ren Hong's shoulder and said earnestly, Ren Hong, if you can't handle such a small change, just stay calm and take care of yourself. Don't think about being a big husband and making achievements in a foreign land. After speaking, he stretched lazily and went back to catch up on his sleep. As Su Fengde became the shopkeeper, leaving only himself to bear the burden, Ren Hong couldn't help but take a deep breath, but in the end, he smiled. I feel a bit nervous now. He knew that today, July Ji Mao, would be an extremely busy day with a hanging spring. P.S. Yan Shigu's annotation in the Han Dynasty. The laws and regulations, as well as the transmission of chariots, all hold a 5-inch wooden transmission letter and are sealed with the official seal of an imperial censor. The transmission of chariots can be divided into 3 parts. 3 parts. There will be cumulative seals at both ends, 2 at each end, and 4 parts. The transmission of chariots will be divided into 5 parts, 2 at each end, and 1 at the center. The transmission of chariots will be divided into 2 parts, and 1 at the center. It is completely consistent with the many Chuanqin Jian unearthed from the Hangquan Han bamboo slips. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. July Ji Mao. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 10 July Ji Mao. On July 21st, from sunrise to sunset, for most of the day, more than 30 people inside and outside the hanging spring were busy, moving in and out, each with tasks assigned by Ren Hong. Ren Hongkai finished inspecting the shed and came out. On the east kitchen courtyard, the sheep were almost peeled. Hanging spring is used to peeling sheep, which is usually done by Luo Xiaogo. However, he saw him use a knife to cut a hole in the back leg of the sheep, then insert a wooden stick into it, poke a passage, pull the cut sheep skin with one hand, and hold the leg of the sheep with the other, so he blew air into it with his mouth. It sounds simple, but it's difficult to do well. The average person is busy for half a day, but there is no movement in their sheepskin. It requires both a strong physique and appropriate skills. This little dog has a huge lung capacity. It can be seen that his cheeks are bulging high, and he blows a few times before hitting the sheepskin a few times. After a while, he blows the sheepskin all over his body, like a leather bag, with all four legs facing upwards, kicking it straight. Then we can start peeling, opening seams on the abdomen and legs of the sheep, lifting the cortex along the chest and abdomen, opening the edges of the peeled skin, and starting to pull. Because the little dog is strong, it will soon pull off the sheepskin. The entire process was completed in just half a moment, which can be said to be seamless. Next, it's time for Xia Dingmao's performance. The sheep were hung on the populous Euphratica tree in the yard, and the peeled sheep head was hung upside down. Xia Dingmao first cut open the abdominal cavity with a knife, pulled out the sheep belly, intestines, etc., and then removed the sheep head. The sheep head was connected to the sheep liver and lungs through the throat. As for the sheep's body, it was placed on a large wooden table. Xia Dingmao's knife was fast and powerful, and he was familiar with various parts and bones of the sheep. He either cut along the bone seam to separate the bones, or swung a small axe to fiercely chop them down. In this way, 3 or 5 cuts were made, and one sheep was completely dissected. Xia Dingmao also called on everyone to clean up the water. Although lamb tripe and intestines were filthy, they were the most commonly eaten meat by the common people and could not be wasted. Ren Hong applauded beside him and said, "In the past, there was a cook who helped the ox, but now there is a Xia Wang who helped the sheep." Xia Dingmao's hands were covered in blood stains, and he asked the people next to him to wipe his sweat. He smiled and said, "According to the recipe given by the gentleman, killing 3 sheep is enough. This is already the last one." Fu Jiezi's delegation consisted of as many as 20 or 30 people, and there may also be accompanying envoys from the western regions. There was no shortage of rice and noodles, but there was plenty of meat and vegetables available. The envoys from the western regions don't matter. What Ren Hong thinks is that he should treat the envoys who are rushing around for more than a year well. Being in a desperate situation, facing various difficulties and obstacles, and constantly experiencing hunger and cold, is not an easy task. It is worth rewarding them well. Ren Hong passed by the pawn shop cleaning leek leaves and sunflowers in the yard and said to Xia Dingmao. Fu Ma Jian and the officials naturally wanted good wine and good meat, so that the ordinary soldiers in the regiment also had to make them eat well. To make them feel that returning to the hanging spring is like returning home, it's called being at home. As he spoke, Ren Hong walked into the kitchen, where the walls were always black with smoke and fire all year round. There were also meat and poultry hanging on the beams of the roof, and a few dried cured chickens that were smoked black by the stove. The most important position in the kitchen is the rectangular high platform earthen stove, which is no different from the stoves in northern rural areas in later times. Not every time before cooking, you need to use a flint or copper pointer to draw a fire. Place it in a hanging spring, and the 2 fire pits in the kitchen must always be on. Watching the fire, the person constantly adds small branches, leaves, and dead grass to maintain its burning. Before cooking, the chef only needs to use tongs to clamp a charcoal and place it on the stove to reignite the flames. The heat of the fire pit cannot be wasted either. Often, 3-legged pottery pots and 4-legged pottery tripods with long legs and deep crotch are placed. The pottery pots are boiling hot water, and one pot is filled with another pot. The pottery tripod is boiling pork. After all, it is a foodie country. Since the Xia dynasty, the people who eat have been ritual vessels. Dings are used to cook meat, and gui, in other words, is a uniquely shaped rice barrel. As for the 9 tripods and 8 guis of the heavenly emperor and the 7 tripods and 6 guis of the feudal lords, they are nothing more than the difference in how many barrels of rice they are qualified to eat. As the king of ceremonial vessels, the tripod still has a place in the court. Occasionally, an ancient tripod is dug out of the river, which is a great auspicious sign. Emperor Wu of Han even changed its name to Que EP1-10. Ren Hong pondered that this would have to be left to future generations, and the era name would have to be Yuan. But in the folk, the tripod gradually declined and could only stay by the fire pit, unable to reach the stove. On the contrary, kettles are popular. On the 4 stove holes on the high stove, except for one steaming pot, Zing, the other 2 are round-bottomed and legless kettles, boiling lamb, which is already ripe. The appearance of a cauldron is very similar to that of a soup pot in later generations. Compared to a 3-legged cauldron, it can more effectively use firepower, save time and fuel, which is highly favored by civilians and the military. In the late Qin dynasty, Xiang Yu used his ultimate skill to burn the boat and won the Battle of the Giant Deer. The human body no longer undergoes significant changes, but tools continue to improve, from the cauldron to the cauldron, but this is not yet the end of the evolution of cookware. The kettle can only be used for cooking and stewing. Although it is cooked thoroughly, it lacks stimulation in taste. Therefore, Ren Hong came to the hanging spring and added a cooking utensil in this small kitchen. That's the frying pan. A huge iron pot, with an open, spherical bottom and wooden handle, occupies the largest stove hole, and the bottom has been smoked black by the stove fire. Although there was only one pot, a few months ago, Ren Hong spent a lot of money hiring a blacksmith to cast it specifically in Xiaogu County. The frontier iron was expensive, and he put in a lot of effort to persuade the petty Sufengde. Although the quality cannot be compared to that of later generations, let's make do with it. After inspecting the kitchen, Ren Hong calmed down and said to Ji Mao, "Corn, millet, soy sauce, vinegar, and soy sauce, all of them are complete, but these ordinary foods are also available in other places. Only various types of noodles and the dishes stir-fried in this pot can show the uniqueness of the hanging spring dish. By the way, how many chickens did Xia Wen kill? Hanging Spring has its own chicken pond, where dozens of chickens are raised. Usually, they only eat eggs, but when a distinguished guest arrives, Ren Hong has to add a few notes to the specialized chicken entry in exit book. Ji Mao said, "My servant remembers that last time Fu Jiezi stayed at Xianquan, he loved to eat chicken the most. He had someone kill 6 of them in one go, and they were all packed up. I dare ask the gentleman, how should these chickens be cooked?" Ren Hong only ordered one dish and said, "Xia Wen follows his specialty, but there is one thing that cannot be omitted, and that is..." Before he could finish speaking, he heard someone shouting loudly from the corner of the hanging spring upstairs. A team of carriages and horses is coming to the west. Xianquanji is not only a post station for the passing officials, soldiers, and merchants, but also an outpost on the Gobi Desert. There are always a few crossbow-wielding officials, day and night, cautiously standing on the 2 corner towers in the northeast and southwest of the dock, alert and alert. In the mixed areas of the Chang and Hu tribes in Dunhuang County, in addition to the Chang people, there is also the Xiaoya tribe that is protected in the southern mountains. The Xiongnu cavalry also frequently roams overseas, with hanging springs arranged for people to watch, monitor pedestrians passing by, and observe beacon lights for warning. Whenever a convoy passes by, they also report to the police station. When Ren Hong hurriedly climbed onto the corner tower, he followed the hand of the material officer pointing towards the distance and happened to see a burst of smoke and dust rising on the straight West Silk Road. It seemed that the team was not small. When the convoy approached, Ren Hong could see clearly that there were over 30 people in the convoy. Not only were there ox carriages, but also a few camels, loaded with goods. With each step taken, the camel bells rang leisurely. At the forefront of the queue is a 4-horse-drawn carriage. Among the carriages, there is a high-crowned scholar sitting upright, holding an 8-foot-long pole, decorated with a red yak tail at the end of the pole, serving as its emblem. There are 3 layers in total. The yak tail fluttered gently in the dry northwest wind. Seeing this object, whether it was the material officer on the corner tower or Su Fengda who walked outside the hanging spring to welcome him, they all became solemn. The soldiers, who were still busy everywhere just now, quickly put down their messy things in their hands, and those blocking the road silently stood aside, bowing their heads in awe. It's not because the newcomer is a 600-stone official. It's not because they are VIP guests who demand high standards of hospitality through letters. But it's because everyone knows what the things on the car represent. Lien Renhong also stood straight on the dock wall, his gaze fixed on the bright yak tail for a long time. That is the envoy who returned from his mission to the western regions. It's the banner of the Han dynasty. P.S. During the Han dynasty, people liked to draw cooking pictures in tombs the most. The pictures in the book circle were often not available and will be posted later in Jiangsu. End of this chapter.